Welcome back to the Uncle Jay podcast. I'm your gracious host, Uncle Jay, here again with my two great friends, Roseanne Mealy and Patrick Lovell, the producer, filmmaker of The Con. How you guys doing tonight?
Good.
All right. Yeah. So tonight we're going to be doing the episode 3 of The Con. But before we get to that, I wanted to give Patrick a chance because last episode that he was with us, we weren't able to have him audio, or we had his audio, we didn't have his video. So I would like to go ahead and give him an opportunity to just go ahead and take, 5 minutes to kind of bring everyone back up to speed. Any new viewers that haven't, because I've been promoting this show, so I know we're gonna have some new viewers tonight, and they may not, they're coming in on episode 3 instead of episode 1. And so I hope they went back and looked at the other episodes. But if they hadn't, Patrick, why don't you go ahead and bring people up to speed on what we're doing here?
But Patrick,
absolutely, Jay, I will tell you, go ahead.
I have to ask you first. Patrick, in episode 2, what did you see?
Well, I will tell you in this way, because first of all, Jay, I want to say thank you to you and Roseanne, because what I saw with you guys recording were two people that didn't include me going through a lot of fantastic material in a spectacular way to introduce our new website, which is really the most important piece of all of this, which is at www.thecleannewdeal.org. Kudos to both of you for going through it and having the wherewithal to go through the entirety of, I think, 3.5 hours worth of material. And I could tell by the end of it, Jay, that you were a little bit tired, as you should be. You were on the East Coast and there was a lot of information. And Roseanne, you carried it brilliantly. I was so proud of you. Roseanne, Jay, I got to tell you,
she did.
Everything she does, she is so incredibly powerful. She is just the glue that holds this whole thing together. And, the fact of the matter is that she never stops. She is relentless with all things that are right in the world and reasonable and good and kind and all about sustenance. And I'm just so proud to be on this journey with her. And now you, Jay, and we are just so grateful for your friendship and your being on board, because it's going to take millions of us to rise with the truth that we are forging ahead to create the Clean New Deal. Now, listen, Jay, she asked me, what did I see? Okay, and it's funny because it's been a long time since I've seen it, but I'll tell you what I saw is a masterpiece, and I'm the producer, okay?
Yeah.
My partner, Eric Vine, is a Michelangelo, and it's been a while since I saw it, but I kind of thought to myself, I know why, and I've known why for some time, but I knew why rewatching this with you guys, airing it last time, why the system had to quash us. The system had to quash us because we got this so goddamn right that we did the work that the $90 billion a year apparatus from the Department of Justice, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the Security and Exchange Commission, Congress, not to mention the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency and AGs around the country, with tens of thousands of freaking employees, could not do for the American people.
And would not.
They didn't get it done, but we got it done, and we got it done in such a spectacular way that you'd seriously have to be a freaking MAGA idiot that supports somebody as stupid and as irritatingly freaking criminal as Donald Trump to tell you that you believe in law and order if you freaking hatch your hitch to his giddy up, which is all about crime. Now, he's a small player in what we revealed, and so I'm going to ask you this question, Jay, and it's not meant to embarrass you. It's meant to draw this out so that the viewers can get a sense of somebody like yourself who's deeply involved with this for all the right reasons. But I want to set up this question this way. Jay, can you remember what happened last week in the Buffalo Bills-Miami Dolphins game?
Yeah, we destroyed them.
Can you give me, some highlights that happened in the second half, for example?
Okay, well, in the second half, they Tua eventually got injured, and he was out, and they had to bring in their other guy, and he didn't do his thing. They couldn't stop the run, and it was just a beatdown. Is there something
bottom line is, if you wanted to, you could probably talk at length about maybe 15 different specific plays 2 weeks later about what took place in that specific game. Now I'm gonna ask you this,
There
Jay.
were picks by the UB product. The UB product. One was for a pick six. There were quite a lot of plays that swung the momentum for the Buffalo
See,
Bills.
here's the thing, Jay. You're a smart guy, right? You and your whole Bills Mafia are smart people, right?
Yes.
You can discern things. You know when things are right or wrong. When you know when a ref made a good call that could swing the play one way or the other. You know when you're getting jacked. You know when somebody's cheating and all of those different things. You're not a sucker. So let me ask you a question, bro. Tell me what you saw in episode 2.
Well, I saw that these guys knew what they were doing. Okay. They took advantage of poor folks. They did all kinds of fraud. Some of these folks didn't even sign some of these documents. And they were able to, some of them were able to get away with it, and they were able to get billions and billions of dollars. And I believe one of the guys was able to get an ambassadorship, if I'm not correct, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, listen, Jay, you got some of that right, but it's interesting to me, and it's really great to hear you lay that out so I can understand what you got and you didn't get in context of what we're talking about. So,
gotcha.
America, if you can look into my eyes, okay, I need you to hear me above the sea of lies that you're immersed with every day. That the richest guy in the world, a guy by the name of Elon Musk, spends billions of dollars, really other people's money, quite frankly, to be able to create a propaganda machine where we are inundated with millions of lies per second, as well as mainstream media, as well as our government, which means that everybody is lying to you. What I'm trying to get you people and the world to understand as quickly as possible, you have to understand you're drowning. Even though you might not think you are, you are. Anybody who's not above the line, anybody who's not above the 5% line, let's say you're somewhere north of $10 million, $20 million. If you are, then you don't really want to pay attention to me because the system works for you. Anybody below that, wise up and listen to what I'm telling you, okay? The reality here is that what we show, Jay, in episode 1 and episode 2 are the facts and the evidence of the largest criminal conspiracy and cover-up in the history of the world. Elon Musk is worth $243 billion. I am providing you the $71 trillion truth. That's trillion. That's on the low end. And this is how they got it. First of all, there's 1,000 billion and a trillion. But what we showed you, Jay, in episode number 1 was that a white collar task force that did their job in Northeast Ohio got basically gumshoed on a case as a result of a bunch of stuff that was happening in Northeast Ohio. They started to investigate, and one of the crimes is what we found, where a senior woman by the name of Addie Polk, a 91-year-old widow who lived in her own house for 40 years, who was basically the projection of the American dream because she and her husband, Robert, had escaped they were part of the Great Migration. They escaped Jim Crow of Alabama, and then they went into the Midwest, and they actually got a slice of the American dream, working during World War II. And ultimately, she lived in her house for 4 decades, only to have it stolen from her using the methodology of all of the crime that we're showing you. Now, interestingly enough, and tragically, she shot herself in the chest 5 times because she had a choice between being evicted and going to the streets or just cashing it all in at the age of 91. Instead of living out the rest of her days in peace and harmony and justice for the life that she had sacrificed to create, her and her husband, the American dream. Instead, it was absolutely raped and pillaged and stolen from her. Because of her tragedy, she opened up the miracle that we discovered a RICO conviction of a regional aspect of this global crime that took a $4.5 trillion housing market and turned it into a $800 trillion global Ponzi scheme. $800 trillion. One thing led to another. We found the only RICO conviction in the entire world for a crime that took out over 150 million people And in episode 2, my brother, we showed you all of the evidence, all of the revelations, all of the testimony of everybody at every step of the pipeline of the largest racketeering enterprise in the history of the world that included literally hundreds of appraisers raising their hands. When you extrapolate the figure, it means tens of thousands of appraisers that said that they played ball with the illegal activity, what was coming from Wall Street and what we call warehouse loans for liars loans.
Mm-hmm.
And we unpack the entire thing. And so ultimately what you've got, my friend, a guy in upstate New York, part of the Buffalo Mafia, a guy who's humble, who's got grandchildren, who's came from, some challenges in his life. Good guy, Uncle Jay. Let me tell you, man, I like this guy. He's salt of the earth, man. He's the real deal. And he's picking up what literally the entire system has to make sure you don't understand. Because I'll ask you this question, Jay. Do you think that most people in this country, including yourself, think that somebody should pay a fine if they steal, I don't know, an old lady's purse, for example?
Absolutely.
Okay, what about a car?
Absolutely.
What if they steal from a bank, maybe a couple of $1,000?
Absolutely.
What if they actually stole from, I don't know, somebody's house, maybe their collection of guns or their collection of silverware? And
For sure.
Should somebody if they get caught for doing something like that, should they go to prison?
Yes.
Okay,
For
so
sure.
then how come the top guys in our country that run the show of our financial system could steal from tens of millions of Americans doing the exact same thing that the government has demonstrated that Donald Trump is guilty of in the manifestation of the 91 indictments, including 34 criminal convictions that are the exact same parameters of what we show you in the con that led to tens of millions of people having their lives stolen. And did they go to jail, Jay?
No, some did, but not the top players.
A couple in the periphery that were different. Did the guys who created this whole thing go to prison?
They got bailed out.
They got bailed out with what, Jay?
With taxpayer dollars by using Federal Act 13.3, using it illegally. They used it illegally.
How much did they get, Jay?
Well, you say 71 plus trillion.
There you go. You got an A+, Jay. How's that feel? Put yourself.
It finally feels good because sometimes you be catching me out there and I'll be like, oh my God, please don't come to me, go to Roseanne. But I got it. I'm with you.
Guess what, Jay?
What's up, brother?
Do you feel like Superman now?
Yeah, I do, because I'm starting to retain the information. Like I tell people when I first tell them about it, I say, listen, man, it may take you a few times. You might have to watch this stuff a few times before you start to get it. And like I said, I still have to go back and check it out.
Do you believe in God, Jay? Do you believe in God, Jay?
Yeah, I mean,
okay, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but whatever. Yeah, but if there is a God, do you think that he's all-knowing or she's all-knowing?
For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let me ask you a question. Are you lying to God if you're lying to the world?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You almost got me there.
Question. So let's just say if you live in light, you live in truth, right?
Yes, sir.
If you live a lie, you're depraved, right?
Yes, sir. Keep it going.
How about this? To the world and everybody watching this, stop lying, stop buying lies. Because when you've got the truth, you're bulletproof.
Absolutely. I love that. I do want to say one thing too. I want to give Roseanne her kudos too, because last time I was completely exhausted and she was coming off of a trip from being at the DNC and she was like a firecracker. She was ready to go. And I was over here like, golly, I was just, I'm going through some things. So, sleeping is a very hard thing for me. But yeah, she carried the show, and I'm happy to have her. I'm happy to be involved in this. I believe in it. I believe in you. I believe in Roseanne. I believe in the movement, and I am trying to do everything in my power through Twitter, through Facebook, through any word of mouth. I'm trying to tell people that they've got to get with Patrick Lovell and Roseanne Mealy and the Con and the Clean New Deal, and we've got to make it happen because, like you said, we're going to need millions upon millions of people if we're going to, stop these criminals, and that's what they are. The criminals
We,
in
the
suits.
people, have got to rip the power back, and what you're
Yes.
doing, my brother, because they quashed us. All right, they quashed us because they got all the power. They own
Yep.
all the freaking methodologies. We spent $4.5 million to get the $71 trillion truth. But here's the thing, bro. This is the big bang of truth. It is the universal truth. It's how light overcomes the darkness. And what you've become, my brother, is you are a nuclear reaction. And you are definitely professing the light forward like a nuclear reaction. That's what we need millions of people to do if we're going to defeat devil, the corruption in the shadows, Satan, whatever you want to call it, because it's the worst amongst us, skull fucking the American dream. And once we plow these motherfuckers, and once we plow them into submission, and we purge the misery of tyranny, do you think there's a smart way to be able to spend $71 trillion, my brother? Can I get a hallelujah?
Because hallelujah, absolutely.
At that point, we're going
to There's a lot of things that can be done.
We're going to create a renaissance of possibility. I assure you not. But the first thing that's got to happen is millions of you got to pull your head out of your ass. No offense, but if you're buying lies, you're in the dark, man. You got to wise up to the light of the truth.
Yeah, man. And you see it every day on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. I'm going to stick with Twitter because, what this guy, Elon Musk, has created is just pure evil, man. It's like all day long. It's nothing but lies and bullshit upon bullshit. And you know what I do is when I see these people post this bullshit, my first thing is the word source with a question mark, and then guess what? You don't hear from them ever again.
That's right.
I just call them out. I go, this is a lying account, and it's a fake account, and it's programmed in Russia, or that Alex Jones squeals like a pig for Putin and freaking, and they're all pimps, whores, junkies, and parasites. That's what it is, man. It's hell. It's the sewer, dude. That's what they've created. But here's the thing that you've got to all understand this. Elon Musk is a welfare queen. He was subsidized by the United States. He's not the freaking genius that created all the stuff that he's a part of. No, he just filtered himself in because he got the money, because he got backdoored by everything I'm telling you. So his $246 billion wealth is part and parcel to the $71 trillion truth I'm giving you, that he's now working with the Saudis who got away with 9/11 and the private equity guys who got away with 2008. And they are doing everything they can to basically put the death nail in our democracy. And the only way we defeat them, my friends, is with this truth that I've got. You either believe me or you don't. But here's the thing. If you don't, you're going to be a victim again and again and again.
No, let me tell you something. I just found out today. So I went and got a haircut. Give a shout out to Buffalo Barbers where I got my haircut today. Some young, fantastic barbers. Miguel owns the place. Rob, Melly, Kevin, and I can't think of the other guy's name. Efren is his name. And we were in there, we were talking politics and stuff. And the barbershop is kind of the place you want to go to kind of get the temperature of where people are. And so the barbershop was kind of split. There were some for, Kamala, some for Trump. And, I just try to give them as much information as I can. But shout out to them. But the thing that I found out today is that it's still happening. I was speaking with a young woman whose mother just purchased a home here in Buffalo, New York, in the Fruit Belt area, right? And her mortgage is $2,000 a month. That's insane for the city of Buffalo. Screams.
That never ended. But you also have to understand, my brother, that this isn't just about the housing market. The housing market's huge. Okay, it is enormous.
Yeah,
it's the entire economy.
Yeah,
it's everything. So what happened after the first tranche that happened in 2009, which was about 33 trillion, then we kicked in another 16 trillion of quantitative easing. I could go into all of these terms later, but it's not important. You need to know there was 49 trillion by 2016. Then they created the guys that got the recipient of this money. They plugged it into the courts to basically bulldoze all the old ladies to kick them out of the house without the right, with fake documents and perjury from the lawyers, just like Donald Trump's been doing his whole career. And they did that to the tune of millions. But then we create zombie companies. Then we create meme stocks. Then we had PPP loan fraud. Then we out the billionaires with all of these guys like Silicon Valley Bank and all the rest of it. Guess where the money was coming from, Jay?
The government, from us. It
No,
was coming from
the
Federal Reserve. Yeah,
around
13.
the
Yep.
Congress. Congress has got the money of the power of the purse. But see, the thing about it is, if you've got everybody in Congress battling over legislation and laws and who they're going to budget and everything else, you get this sort of like, scrum, right, where everybody's fighting. You know what they just did for the rich people? Let's just do it, work around with the Federal Reserve, and we're going to pump tens of trillions of dollars around the system that nobody can see, and we're going to give it to all the billionaires so they could skull fuck you. How does that sit with you? You want to kick your ass?
Not good at all. Especially when I got people here in the city that are struggling. They can't pay the rent. They can't buy groceries. And the first thing they want to do is blame Biden and inflation. And I try to tell them it's not. It's corporate greed.
But it's corporate theft, dude.
Yes.
Greed is not illegal. Greed is a disease. Don't get me wrong. But theft. Now that's something you can actually charge somebody and get them prison time. If what, Jay? What are you learning about this whole situation?
If it's done, if they actually do it, like
if
they have to
got the critical mass of the guys in power that do their job. Did anybody do their job on Trump?
No.
Nobody.
I mean, they did it, but it doesn't look like anything's going to happen.
The guy's been doing this for 4 decades. Yeah. He could have been in jail 3 decades ago, dude. What I'm telling you is, and what the American people need to have their lift veiled up and everything else, man. We expect our street lights to work. We expect the elevator to work when we get in a building. We expect our car's brakes to work. We expect the airplane to get us from point A to point B safely. Why? Because that's a modern society. We have regulation to make those things work. So why wouldn't we do that with the actual legality of how finance works within this construct of what I'm telling you? People, it's this simple. It's theft, okay? But on a monumental scale.
And it's our money that they're stealing.
And it's not, the future money, that's for damn sure.
Well, that's what I mean, taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, that's how they plug it in. There's a whole nother way that works.
Okay.
We could talk about finance and economics later. That's not important.
That's fine. That's fine.
What's important is you need to understand that the system has different methodologies for being able to create budgets when they need to. That's the whole purpose of Congress. It's got the power of the purse. If we need to go build, infrastructure somewhere, Congress can choose to do that. And then they have never-ending money to be able to do that. Is it based on taxes coming in eventually? Yeah, sure, that's part of it, but that's not the only thing. That's the federal budget, and I'll let Roseanne go into that later because we got to get into this. But you got to understand the Federal Reserve, man. This is the greatest trick the devil ever played to make you think you didn't exist. They just created this system where they print the money, where they can put it into the middle guys. Basically this last week, Elon Musk was all over Twitter saying the government's going to go bankrupt. First of all, the government can never go bankrupt because we have a fiat currency. We have our sovereign currency. We don't borrow money from other people. We borrow money from ourselves. And if we can print as much money as we need to, we're never going to go bankrupt. Get it? Now, the value of the dollar can fluctuate because of inflation and some other things that go on. But unless $330 million people decide that they're not going to use dollars overnight, then this thing's not going away. But guess what? Where are they going to go? They're going to go to the Chinese yuan. They're going to go to what? The Moscow, whatever.
The Brexit or whatever it is that they're all trying to put.
Because those guys are a bunch of thieves anyway. Not only that, it's like the safest place in the world for the currency of the rich is the U.S. Treasury. Okay? Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of schemes. But what we're trying to tell you guys, when people say, how are you going to pay for that? This doesn't mean that you get lazy and you expect a welfare check just like Elon. No, you work, you do your thing and everything else, but we got to create a system of fairness to where people have opportunity. We got to reboot the American dream. If we were to recreate the entire infrastructure grid and have like absolute huge new wealth occur because we've got jobs all over the place to rebuild the infrastructure that would take 40 years to do, that's like $7 trillion. Yeah, we're talking $1 trillion on the low end. And could we improve our schools? Could we improve our healthcare?
We could do all those things with that money.
That's right. And guess what? We can still go to football games. In fact, the football games might even be less. We can still go to beers. We can still go to, there's all sorts of stuff we could do. But the fact of the matter is the prices are through the roof.
Yeah. Well, we're getting a new stadium in 2026, and
it's not the government. It's not the government that created that. It's the billionaire class that owns the government, that backdoor stuff into them, that goes into everything that we're showing you in the con, because they can hyperinflate the cost for themselves because there's no downside. Because let me ask you this, Jay, were you ever taught, my brother, were you ever taught in any of your education that the entire purpose of the United States was that we would prop up billionaires in a way that we would give them free money illegally
No.
so that they could be above the government and above market forces while they could betray the American people? Was that the United States that you were taught to believe in?
Absolutely not.
What do you
Nope.
see, Jay?
That's what I see happening.
Bingo, brother.
So, it's crazy.
So get pissed. Get angry.
I'm glad I met you guys because, like, I'll be honest with you, bro. I never thought of it like this. I never knew any of this stuff. Like, if I would have never met you guys, I would have never known anything like this. You know what I mean? It was meant to be because this is some heavy shit, man. It's heavy. It's heavy.
We need you to continue pounding, but we need people out there that listen to really honest, good people like Jay. Listen to him, man. Listen to him. Do I sound like some sort of religious zealot? Okay, whatever.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I'll tell you what the universal construct is, dude. I'll tell you what one universal truth is, and we don't even have to get into religion or anything else. Do you know what the universal truth is, bro? There's literally one universal truth. You know what that is?
No, you tell me.
Okay, so from the beginning, and we know this from physics, we know this from science, we know this from what we know about the way the universe works. It literally blew out of what we call the Big Bang from the singular.
Oh, okay. That's what you're talking about. My bad. Yeah, I got it.
But the force of light, my friend, the force of light has to overcome and propel dark matter, okay? And it does that through the supernova, through nuclear reaction, through energy, where it gets heat and it gets powerful and it grows and then it explodes.
Exactly.
That's the universal truth, my friend. So what side are you on?
I'm on that. I'm on the Big Bang side.
Bingo.
I want to be the reactor, like you said. I'm going to be the reactor, and hopefully I can get people. Like I said, I've been in a lot of these political spaces. I've been asking if I can put, stuff up in the jumbotron to make people aware of the con and the new clean deal and the episode that was coming up. Some folks let me do it, and I'm hoping that we've got some of these folks. Actually, let me go to the comments and see if anybody's here commenting. All right, we don't have any comments yet, but I'm sure we'll have some here shortly. Roseanne, do you want to say anything before we get to episode 3?
I just want to say, you, my buddy, keep going to those barber shops. Okay?
Yeah, well, it was tough. I'm going to have, so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to bring on a young lady that works at the barber shop. She's for Trump. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring her on the last episode, where we do episode 5 of the con. Bring her on for a quick 15, 20 minutes and let her kind of communicate with you all and myself.
Sure.
And see if we can.
Make sure that, Jeff, you do that. Tell her to watch the entirety of the con first.
Well, yeah, I'm hoping she's watching tonight. She said she'd be watching tonight, but we'll see.
Oh, good.
But I've got her number, and I told her tonight I told her while I was at the barbershop that I want her to come onto the show and meet you guys and have a conversation with us. And again, that's Buffalo Barbers on Grant or on Amherst and I believe Grant Street. It's right there on the corner. So yeah, they're a great barbershop. A lot of they're good kids. I just believe that they've been given the misinformation bug. I heard them telling me a lot of the same bullshit that I've been hearing on Twitter, and it's just like, golly,
Look, man, Donald
tough.
Trump is there to speak to people who don't know how the system works. Anybody who buys anything that comes out of that puking, lying sack of garbage's mouth doesn't understand who that guy is. He inherited $400 million. He got put into a situation to deceive from the very beginning. He was working with the mob and the Five Families back in the 70s. He got involved with the mob down in Atlantic City.
All his casinos.
Money. He's the only idiot that could ever
bankrupt a casino. Yeah, absolutely.
He was involved with what we call from the very beginning. He was involved with rolling these things out with the junk bond deals and the savings and loan scenario, which was the first adaptation or the first, shall we say, expression of all of the things that we're involved with right now. It's all the same thing. It's financial fraud. It's basically, you have to think of it as smoke and mirrors. You got to think of it as a 3-card Monty. But what we're giving you is the what we're giving you is the black box of how this whole thing works, right? So, for example, to all of those folks, I'm not going to call them stupid, because you got to know. I don't know what their level of commitment is to understanding things, or if they just look at their phone and they react to some dude talking about people fucking eating,
cats and dogs and shit,
dogs and all that kind of crap, and that's their worldview, because that would make you stupid, because you need to have some sort of critical thinking skills to go, oh, I wonder if somebody actually set that up, or maybe some of those videos are coming from somewhere else, like another part of the world, or maybe even better, maybe they're fake, right? Maybe they're just. I'm a producer. I could make all sorts of fake stuff all day long, and then if I got 50 million people, basically responding to it like it's the truth. Like you said, Churchill. You like to be Churchill. One of the great quotes that Churchill said was that a lie can get around the world 7 times before the truth gets its pants on. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because the truth takes time and effort to understand all of the elements. Now, for example, would I ask that same person at the barbershop if they were going to, like if we were on an airplane together and they were telling me how the world worked, right, and that they know it all, and all of a sudden the plane started to have some problems, and like let's say like Airport 77, right, the pilots start to have some problems, have a heart attack, and everything else. Are we going to feel pretty good if they say, you know what, I got this, I'm going to go fly the plane?
No.
No, because they don't know how the plane works, right? That doesn't mean they don't expect the plane to get safely if they buy a ticket. That's because we've got regulation and we've got professionals and we got people that went through years and years and years of training and all of the other things that go into it, like all of the experts that create the computer science and all of the physical textualization of how a plane works and the mechanics and all of the different elements that go into it. Do you think somebody who doesn't know anything about the world could go out there and go figure out how to put all that stuff together themselves?
No.
So who the hell do they think they are? They're going to tell us how the world works based on a video of some Haitians eating cats?
Yeah.
That's what happens when you deal with people who don't understand how the world works. And so they get conned. That's what Don is. Don has been involved with fraud and falsification of business records. So let me just set this up for you real quick before we move on. So everything that the United States government is indicting Donald Trump on, of which the only thing we're going to see before the election, because we're that corrupt, is the fact that we saw 34 felony convictions for what, Jay? It was using deceptive acts and practices to lie to the people of New York about information that he covered up, using falsification of business records, and then using all sorts of different variables of covering up the payments, which were illegal, because there you can prove he was spending money for a specific outcome because he had the intent to do so, which is called deceptive acts and practices. Now, on top of that, in the case with the civil fraud trial, where the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, made out the case in Judge Ergeron's court, or maybe I'm getting those mixed up because it was a different judge in that. Bottom line, it was for Donald Trump increasing the appraisal value for his properties, starting with his penthouse, that he basically said was 3 times the size of what it was. And then he was using comparisons of what we call in UPAP structures, uniform professional appraising practices, that he was saying that the comparables in the neighborhood were like 3 times higher or 4 times higher than what everything was selling for in his own building. Okay, so that's, people don't know how that stuff works, but he does, and he knows how to cheat at it, and nobody was stopping him. Get it? See, the banks could have easily sent their professionals to go, hey, you know what, Don, there must be something wrong with your paperwork here. You're lying. And all of
Deutsche Bank, it should have been Deutsche Bank who done it, right?
But who was Deutsche Bank getting billions of dollars from? Putin. That's right. And where were they spending those billions of dollars?
Here in America.
Including who?
With Donald Trump.
That's right.
All these
idiots. So there's people that think that there wasn't an insurrection at the Capitol.
But we all saw it on national TV.
That's right,
in real time.
An idiot, this jitball Tucker Carlson, who I'd love to anybody out there listening who would love to see me go, get at it with some of these people. Trust me, I've already put out the APB to what's his name, Dana White, and I said, hey man, put me in the freaking octagon with Russell Crowe, with Alex Jones, with Elon Musk, and
not Russell Crowe, Russell Brand.
Oh, sorry. I said Russell Crowe.
Russell
Brand. And did I miss somebody in there? I said Alex Jones, Russell Brand, Tucker Carlson, Elon Musk. Oh yeah, and you know what? I'll give you the freaking cherry on the top. Throw in Marjorie Taylor Greene in there.
I
I'll
can't
go at it with
stand her.
all of them, okay? And I'll go
Yeah.
ring ring, and I'll give all of the upside to charity, okay? I'll take them all on one at a time. How's that?
You know what I think would be better is if have them sit down and talk with, like, I would love to see you sit down with each one of those and have a conversation with them.
You can't have a conversation
I
with
know,
those idiots
I know,
because they're
I know.
idiots. What I could do,
I know.
like if I was on that stage instead of Kamala Harris, who did a very good job in the debate, but the problem with Kamala Harris, and this is what your Trump supporters might want to be aware of, because they're going to be like, this guy's all anti-Trump and he hates Trump. And no, I've always hated Trump, but Trump is not the reason the system exists the way the system works. Trump is the consequence of the system. We've had this corruption for decades and decades. And by the way, Kamala Harris,
they don't like when you mispronounce her name.
Kamala.
It's like Kamala.
I know, I get that. Kamala, got it.
Okay.
Kamala, my apologies. So she was the AG of California, where all of this stuff was going on. And you know who she let get away with the biggest rape and pillage of the California?
Steve Mnuchin, if I'm
Bingo. Who was Steve Mnuchin?
I believe he was Donald Trump's
Treasury Secretary,
yes,
brother.
There you go.
You know why that's important among the guy who's the Treasury Secretary is the guy who's in charge of the money, pretty much. Why is that? He can't make.
Well, that's like having the bank robber work security at the bank.
There you go.
Right.
Okay, even worse. Here's the thing about Federal Reserve Act 13.3 that you should be aware of as we go into this next section of episode number 3. So. After everything that we show you in the con, we had this massive meltdown where we ended up with the government and media and everybody buying in, and Obama with his white horse, and he's going to like change we can believe in and all that jazz, said that, what we're going to do is we're going to get our dysfunctional government to come together to ride to the rescue to save the global economy by creating what was known as the Troubled Assets Relief Program, where they provided $700 billion.
DACA? Is that DACA?
No, it's just
it wasn't DACA. My bad.
No, this was to save the failing banks at the moment.
Okay. Yeah. The bailout.
Nobody understood. While they were doing that in media, Anderson Cooper and Rachel Maddow and freaking at that time, Bill O'Reilly and all these numbskulls at Fox, while they were all buying into TARP and everybody was like, oh my God, we're going to be socialism. We're going to create moral hazard. We're going to give billions of dollars of hard-earned taxpayer money to the system. And that, my God, that's the most incredibly horrible thing in the history of the United States. And this is not the United States and all this other stuff. What did we do, Jay? That it?
No, we gave them what was it, about 780 something billion?
No, dude, we backdoored, dude. We backdoored $33 trillion in 2009 when nobody was looking. That's what I'm telling you. We gave them 33 trillion plus another 16 trillion, and there are ways all of these things work. So that's 49 trillion.
Oh, okay. I got you now.
49 trillion. Do you think that $49 trillion went to the rest of the United States?
No,
it went to about maybe, I'm going to say 100 to 300,000 people. I've never done the real study on it, but I'm going to say it's about 100,000 people that got their fingers on that $33 trillion.
Well, I thought it was the banks and shit. It was
the banks, the private equity, the hedge fund, the private assets, or private asset managers and private wealth funds. Yeah, the banks are a part of that. They're the systemically important.
It was Wall Street essentially, right? It was Wall Street that they had to bail out because they played loose.
Money for?
Huh?
Who does Wall Street manage money for? Pretty much the world, dude.
Yeah.
Who's got money?
Only rich people.
Mostly the rich.
Yeah.
Mostly
only the top 5%? You said 1%.
10% are pretty. They got like 90% of the world's stocks. But the bottom line is that Elon Musk, for example, he tripled his wealth during COVID. Do you think he sold triple the Teslas during COVID?
No, absolutely not.
No, it was because of this, bro.
He's on. He suckles from the tit of fucking subsidized money.
That's right. That's right. Government contract. So what does that mean, man? It means he's a socialist. He called Kamala.
Absolutely. Well, that's what I was just gonna say after you said it. It's like they complain about socialism, but they're the very ones that are suckling
Because
from
they don't want you to know it. They don't want anybody to know it. They want everybody to blame everybody else because they're too stupid to understand how the system works. They didn't go get a PhD. They didn't have millions of dollars to go to the ends of the world and back to get all the details. I did. And I'm trying to get everybody to understand it, and sometimes you make friends, sometimes you don't. But I can't be nice about this.
Not anymore. No.
Dude, I'm trying to get, no matter who you are, no matter if you're a crackhead for MAGA or a crackhead for, I don't know, whoever, man, Dr. Stein or Dr. Cornell
West. Yeah.
None of those guys could do anything anyway, and they don't even know how this stuff works, man. They're just getting paychecks from people and telling people lies, dude.
Well, did you see Jill Stein she looked kind of foolish this week. I think she was on a Breakfast Club and they asked her how many senators there were or something, and she said like 600. Yeah, she said like 600 or something, and it's like 400 or something.
She's a doctor specialized in something else, not running for the president, obviously, even though she's done it like 4 times, right? So look, the point that I'm trying to make you is it's a circus. NBC, CBS, MSNBC, Fox, CNN, they all lied to you. The government, the DOJ, the FBI, the DOJ, all of the tools in the fool circus of the MAGA zombie apocalypse. That's Elon and Tucker and all of these other clowns. They lied to you. And the one guy that lied above all, who knows all this stuff soup to nuts better than me, actually, he doesn't know it better than me. He did know it better than me. He was my conduit to the whole thing. A dude by the name of Matt Taibbi. But
he's a douchebag now, though.
Yeah, he got paid by Elon and Putin. Yeah. I don't know. Somebody flipped the switch on him because
because I had an old hippie friend of mine named Brian Fitzpatrick. I'm going to introduce you to his nephew I was telling you about. And he used to love Matt Taibbi when he wrote for the Rolling Stone magazine. And he was like, man, this guy has got it. He goes after him. He exposes them. And then now I say, if my friend was alive today, he's rolling over in his grave to see what Matt Taibbi has become.
Matt Taibbi was like, to me, Led Zeppelin back in the days, was some of the greatest rock and roll of all time. That was what his journalism was. But he got snitched. And what people need to understand, there's twofold. One is he got Me Too'd. But why did he get Me Too'd? We don't understand exactly. I think he was up to some serious hijinks back in the 90s in Moscow because he was
he got caught up in some shit in Moscow with being sexually.
And I think they got him. And I think they said, I'll tell you what, Matt, listen, why don't you shut your mouth about the truth? Why don't you take a lot of money from us? And we just want you to basically not say anything negative about us and let us do whatever we want. How's that, Matt? Or you're going to die.
Yeah, no, that's how they play, brother. I tell you, I've always thought since the mid '80s that Trump was an asset of the Russian government. I mean, all his wives come from Russia, outside of Marla Maples, and you can tell Melania does not like him at all. She despises him, bro. You can see it in her eyes, bro. It just oozes out of her, and so you can tell that that's all. Like, I believe that he married her. She's his handler, and she reports back to Putin. And that's just how I think. That's how
Trump was working with the 5 families of New York back in the 70s, dude. He was in Atlantic City.
Yep.
So when he goes into Moscow, who do you think he's gonna get a personal introduction to?
The oligarchs, the Russian mob.
Russia is Russia communist anymore? Are they?
I don't believe they're communists, but I do believe they have like fake democracy. It's like it's not.
Dude, they're a crime syndicate.
Yeah. Well, I know that, but
that's their.
Don't they like legitimately think? Don't like they doesn't like Putin have like fake elections where like people think? It's all bullshit. Well, that's what I meant.
What's going to happen to the United States if Donald Trump wins? See, look, in that last, and I'll finish with this, and we got to get started, dude.
Yep.
Donald Trump is the perfect red carpet reflection of everything that we're showing you. He's literally just, I think God sent him to say, look at me. Look at what I'm getting away with. You guys are fucking idiots. I'm going to do it all day, every day. I'll piss on your head telling you it's rain, and you're going to sit there blindfolded with your mouth open with blindfolds, and you're going to like it. And he's going to do that until someone stops him. But why wouldn't he is the whole point, right? That's what the whole circus is. It's like once Wall Street got away with $71 trillion, do you think some other people that are real criminals might want to get a piece of that?
Absolutely.
There's your world.
And that's why a lot of people, I think, like him, because their number one thing to me that they say is, well, they all do it. You know what I'm saying? Oh, they all do it. They all do it. So why is it him that they're singling out when they all do it? They all deal in stocks. They know the information pre-hand, and they go and make millions and millions of dollars in the stock market. So why aren't we going after them? And
Because
my thing is we should be going after all of them.
A lot of those fools think that they're going to get a piece.
Yeah. Well, and don't forget Monday night. Monday night. His new grift is crypto, Bitcoin.
Well, okay. And by the way, that's another reason why Elon's involved with the whole deal, and same with Peter Thiel. Those guys. That's what the whole. Okay, so what? Same with Bobby Kennedy, by the way. Okay, and I have it on high because I was working with the guy who became the campaign director for Bobby Kennedy, and I knew he was tied to Russian crypto, bro. So the thing is, dude, you can't make this shit up, because MAGAs are all like, oh my God, the government, because of fiat currency, they're going to create central bank currency.
They think, but this is just another pump and dump.
Yeah, but meanwhile, what I'm telling you is that's what Peter Thiel and Elon Musk started with. They were in what we call fintech, and they created PayPal, and they're the PayPal mafia, which is fintech. And so what do you think the whole circus of X is? They get information. They get you in the book. They know what you're going to do. They know what you're going to buy. Then they can
absolutely. It's a fucking site. It's like a fucking KGB fucking
mind virus.
Psyop. Yeah, like a psyop shit. Absolutely.
They project. They talk about the woke mind virus. But what it is it's the MAGA zombie apocalypse spreading Trump contagion. See, this is the whole deal, man. And by the way, the KGB in fucking Putin are masters at this. But guess who else are masters of this? Guess who else is masters, brother?
CIA.
Bingo, because Putin told Tucker in that interview, that 4.5 interview, he's like, you couldn't even make the CIA. But he's like, yeah, those guys are good. Because who do you think created crypto? I think the CIA created crypto. Who's Satoshi? Because what we saw with the CIA was, and this is so funny about Bobby Kennedy, and this is tied to the revelations of everything that I am revealing to you, is Bobby Kennedy's father and uncle obviously got assassinated, right? And a lot of people this many years later, and Trump's going to talk about, okay, we're going to reveal that
we're going to give out the information.
He didn't do it the first time, did he?
But what makes it? Yeah, exactly. And that's what they say. They say all the time. Well, he's going to do this. He's going to do that. I said, well, why didn't he do it the first? He's going to let out the Epstein.
Because he's a liar. That's why. Because he's a liar. But the bottom line, the point that I'm trying to make is that, so when you understand that everything I'm revealing to you came from what's known as Sullivan and Cromwell. Sullivan and Cromwell was the law firm that created the CIA. A guy by the name of Raj Cohen was the guy that was able to figure out how to do the backdoor with the Fed, quite frankly, with all the guys in the Fed. And I've got him on camera admitting that. Now, that's information that we can provide to you guys downstream and is on our website. Will be, I think, relatively.
Any relation to Roy Cohen?
No, it's Raj Cohen is the name.
But Raj. Okay, my bad. Okay.
But the bottom line is that we're going to have it on www.thecleannewdeal.org. And ultimately, we've got all the information, dude. This is what the entire system cannot allow you to understand. But to finish this whole thing about how crazy it is with Bobby Kennedy, right? Is Bobby Kennedy is like, oh my God, when he first started running for the presidency, he's like, it's all about the CIA. It's about the intelligence, about this corporate fascist state. And he's like saying the truth about all that, but he doesn't know all of the parameters. And I've watched him over the course of the time, and he's not telling the truth about anything. He just was, basically sidestepping and slipstreaming with Nicole, who I say is, his VP candidate, is twerking for Don or Elon, quite frankly. But the bottom line is, this is what's so funny, is that, you remember I told you that the campaign director for Bobby had a direct conduit to Russian crypto and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The bottom line is that the CIA was the centrifuge to basically create all of the manifestation of the emergency lending facilities, which were the bailouts that you're referring to. But it went through them, okay? It went through the same agency that created the CIA. Oh, and by the way, they were the guys that were the general counsel for all things SBX or FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, which is, oh, wow, what is that all about? And then you consider all of that in context, my friend, to Satoshi Nakamoto. And yeah, do you think it's possible that the CIA was the ones who created crypto?
Man,
This
hey,
is
listen.
weird.
If you think they did, then I believe what you think. You know what I'm saying? Up, we lost him. Patrick, you there? Up, we get a little technical difficulty. All right, well, until we can get him up, there he is.
No,
Okay.
it's kind of funny, man. I did that just for effect. They got me, right?
Oh, okay.
They got me right at that moment. I was just fucking with you, dude. But here,
Oh, okay.
the bottom line is that we're going far afield at the moment, but it's all wrapped into what.
Yeah, it all ties in. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So, Roseanne, do you want to say anything before I have him kind of lay out episode 3? We'll get to episode 3, and then we'll come back and chat a little bit more about some of this stuff, and then we'll end it there. Well, is there anything you want to say before we get this episode started?
I just want to give you kudos because you have had your aha moment. Okay.
Thank you.
And
I'm still learning. Like I said,
that's
even
okay.
Every episode, it's some serious. This is serious shit, man.
Yeah. Wait till you go to the website. You're gonna see everything. Okay.
Got you. Yeah.
You got everything. It's the black box of facts.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to definitely talk, and so that's what I say. After the episode, I want to talk a little bit about the Clean New Deal before we wrap up. Go ahead, Pat.
For your audience, what's a black box, brother?
A black box is what they look for when a plane goes down. That explains why the plane may have went down the last minutes before, the plane hits the.
It tells us what the fuck happened, man.
Absolutely, there you go. That's yep. I should have said it like that, but hey. What are you gonna do? All right. Well, why don't you get us let us know what we're about to see here, and then I'll start getting it wrapped up.
A continuation of the largest revelation of the largest financial criminal conspiracy in the history of the world that wrapped up the world, and we're all still paying a price for. Remember, we discovered the only racketeering conviction in the entire country for this crime, this global crime, in Northeast Ohio in episode 1. Based on the tragedy of a woman, Addie Polk, who had to commit suicide and go homeless. And then in episode 2, we gave you all of the details and all of the evidence and all of the testimony. And where do you go when you have all the facts of the largest criminal conspiracy in history? You just turn the page is what you do.
Absolutely. All right. Well, without any further ado, I'm going to get this episode started. I'm going to drop us from the studio so that you guys can see the full view of it, and we'll be back after this episode, so please enjoy, and we'll be back shortly.
This was money chasing people. This was not somebody looking for a loan.
The person who sold you a loan made more money if they sold you a higher rate loan.
They were sold a lie.
I don't believe Addie Polk took out the mortgage on her home. I don't believe she signed any documents.
I think it was AmeriQuest that had people who were bragging. You could come in at 9 o'clock and have a loan by 5 o'clock. Because they were going back and manufacturing all the paperwork.
If I don't do it, the guy down the street will just make the law.
What if he doesn't have a job and doesn't have any assets? Fund him.
AmeriQuest and its brethren were salespeople for the money that was coming out of Wall Street. And that sucker is rolling down the tracks completely out of control.
I wanted to find out who owned my house because apparently I was getting ready not to be able to own it myself. So I'm trying to find out if Novastar is even in business because apparently they sold my loan. And they kept telling me we sold it to Saxon. Well, Saxon's a servicer only. They don't own the loan. And so I was determined to find out who owned that loan. Well, I finally find out that Deutsche Bank I don't recall exactly who or how or online or what information I came across, but I found out Deutsche Bank owned it. And this takes me into some incredible places. I actually find the series of where my loan is, and it's in this bundled group. I find it and I read it.
Okay, do you know what the parameters are? I mean, is it a AAA rated?
It talks about it can't be overinflated. It can't be a fraudulent mortgage, and mine is. You sold a loan that was fraudulent. You sold a loan that was overinflated. You sold a loan that has discrepancies. You're saying this is a good loan, but right here, and I underline it, it can't be that, but it is. It's a mastermind scam.
With everybody in on it.
Everybody, except for the homeowners. We're the only ones that don't know.
Self-respect and pride is not what you take with you, but the village of kids you touch who relate to you. You gotta make a strong presence on this generation, because the legacy you leave can change the situation. Your forefathers fought for the freedom of man. I'm just here to remind you that if you lost again, take control of the matter. Natural law, rules shadow. We're just here to remind you that it can get lost again.
Please welcome Dan Wargo, who is a retiree with the Ironworkers from Cleveland. Dan?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you ever thought that I thought I would be here, I can't believe this has happened. I am a retired Local 17 iron worker and worked 44 years in hard service in an occupation that built the skyline of Cleveland. Many of us have health and physical problems related to this work. We believe and promise well-deserved pensions, which would, when retired, we could live the last years of our lives in dignity. And my pension and many others have been reduced up to 60%. Personally, that was 58% for me. In other words, I went from $2,600 a month to $1,100. I'm not up here to plea with a cry. I'm just saying, believe me, it can happen, and it has happened.
When the financial crisis hit, it hit all of us. And I spent a lot of time investigating how an epidemic of fraud against mortgage borrowers ultimately triggered it. But it didn't take me long to realize that what triggered the crash was only half the story. On the other side of this debacle were those conned into investing in this mess, including millions of pensioners who've lost everything as a result. If borrowers like Addie and Becky represent one side of the crisis, pensioners like Dan Wargo and his fellow iron workers represent the other. And no story of the financial crisis is complete without hearing their side of it.
Well, at first, I thought, no way, this is just this is not going to happen. Okay, maybe we're in a little bit of trouble, but that's a lot. 60%. I don't know about for the other people involved in the world. That's massive. Take 60% away from your income, and see how it affects you.
Losing half my pension, I couldn't believe it was happening. I gave up my kids' baseball games, picnics. There's a lot of home things, family things that I sacrificed to work. If I was scheduled to work, I worked.
Somehow I got arthritis. A lot of ironworkers do. I've had neck surgeries to help prevent this, but it's happened. I mean, it's just, the doctors tell me they're been abused. Without pain medication, I'd sit in the house. I have to.
And that pain medication costs something, doesn't it?
Oh, it costs, but it's worth it to me. The wife understands. I mean, I see my wife continue to work. She was going to retire, and she's hurting physically, but she's elected to keep working. I tell her, you know, retire yesterday, please, but she's feels the pain.
All I gave up for that pension and to have half it taken away from me was pretty devastating. I still think about it. I think about it every day.
Pension funds everywhere were devastated after the crash of 2008, with many now facing complete insolvency. And while these funds come from all over the country and represent professions ranging from iron workers to public school teachers, the vast majority of those hit the hardest have one striking thing in common. Prior to 2008, they had been heavily invested in mortgage-backed securities. Somehow, predatory mortgages like Addie Polk's and Becky Weese's were ending up in pension funds of people like Dan Wargo and Larry Burrell. But how? As I found out from Prentice Cox, former assistant AG in Minnesota, lenders like Ameriquest and Countrywide were really only half the equation. Those companies only had money to lend because they got it from somewhere else. That somewhere was Wall Street. It was clear that uncovering Wall Street's role in the crisis was the key to piecing together the 2008 puzzle. But Wall Street isn't exactly an open book. If you really want to know what goes on under the surface, you need to talk to someone from the inside, an insider like William Cohen. In a past life, William was a top-tier Wall Street executive who worked for investment firms like Merrill Lynch, JP Morgan Chase, and Lazard. He left Wall Street to become a journalist, and in his new incarnation, is not afraid to expose wrongdoing when he sees it.
You know, once upon a time on Wall Street, the banks would take out a full-page check. We underwrote $1 billion worth of Ford bonds. And it was like a form of advertisement for all these firms. You know, if you're on the left of the ad, that means you're the lead underwriter, and that was a very prestigious thing. You notice that nobody has those anymore. The reason nobody has those anymore is there aren't 100 firms anymore who are competing with each other. There are basically 5. Okay? You know, there's really nobody that does what Goldman Sachs does, which is right over there. Right. There's nobody that does what JP Morgan Chase does, which is now up in Midtown and used to be right here at 23 Wall or right there at 60 Wall. I mean, these firms now have an effective oligopoly, an effective cartel. This is truly the new golden era of Wall Street. I've seen my mission after having worked 17 years on Wall Street and now 11 plus years writing about it is to sort of make it understandable for people, understand how Wall Street has snookered them, how important Wall Street ultimately is, and why we need to make sure that what Wall Street did to us repeatedly, whether it was in 1987, in the early 90s, the late 90s, the early 2000s, 2007, 2008, can be prevented in the future.
Let's start with the basics then. What was the historical purpose of Wall Street?
You know, Wall Street has always been a relatively simple formula of allocating capital from those who have it and want to invest it and get a return on it, and providing that to people who need it, who want to borrow it, to build companies, to build new plant and equipment, to hire more workers, to expand into different markets. It's putting savers together with borrowers. Without that, it wouldn't function. It would all fall apart. When we saw that in real time in September and October of 2008.
When Wall Street is functioning properly, it can play a critical role in growing and helping our economy. But when Wall Street goes off the rails, it can become an economic wrecking ball. So what ultimately governs the direction Wall Street goes? One basic concept: incentives.
For the first 200 years, Wall Street was made up of a series of small private partnerships. And the people who ran those firms had their own capital at risk every day. So not only could you lose the capital you invested, you could lose your entire net worth. All of the art collections, everything that they had bought out in the Hamptons, all of that could be lost if one of their partners did something stupid. And basically that preserved sort of an equilibrium in our economy throughout much of the 20th century. But fast forward to the 1970s and 1980s, when all the firms started going public, that whole dynamic was changed because suddenly you could get all this easy money from third parties, from banks who would provide you with credit lines, from public investors who would buy your bonds, or from equity holders who would invest in your stock. And so this whole culture of being a steward for your own capital and for everything that you had built up in your life got completely thrown out the window and substituted by this bonus culture where everybody on Wall Street was motivated by one thing, generating as much revenue as they possibly could to try to get as big a bonus as they possibly could every year, using other people's money to do it.
With the prudence that private partnerships naturally creates no longer in effect, incentives for the newly named CEOs changed dramatically as they now had the freedom to generate bank profits using other people's money. But recognizing this potentially massive conflict of interest, the industry took steps to keep CEOs on the straight and narrow by overhauling executive compensation, tying CEO pay directly to the performance of the bank. On the surface, this seems like a pretty reasonable solution, but as I would soon learn, this new pay system had a fatal flaw, a flaw that would become a catalyst for the entire financial crisis.
So there was a revolution, that's what they called it, in executive compensation. And in this revolution, they said, hey, we have to worry because CEOs may not be loyal to the shareholders. They may loot them. Okay, that's good. We agree with that. And therefore, what we need to do is basically bribe the CEO not to loot the shareholders. But of course, it did exactly the opposite. So what it said is, if you report for accounting purposes higher profits, you, the CEO, will get a whole lot more compensation. Well, that doesn't align my interests with the corporation. I control the accounting. I can do the scam. I would far more like to engage in fraud, get the sure thing of reporting record profits, and get a lot of wealth.
This new system tied CEO bonuses to how much annual profit the bank reported. However, instead of ensuring that CEOs made responsible decisions to make those profits, it incentivized them to push for profitability at all costs, even if that meant making those profits up. And Wall Street execs didn't have to look far for inspiration, as a group of CEOs from a related industry had already developed a perfect recipe. Over in the mortgage industry, CEOs had come up with a way to generate giant bonuses for themselves by making ungodly amounts of bad loans to borrowers across the country. And far from being repulsed by this behavior, Wall Street wanted in on the action. So the banks, each of whom had vast stores of cash that the uninsured mortgage companies would ultimately need to survive, approached these lenders with an offer they couldn't refuse.
Mortgage lenders, they would end up striking a deal with an investment bank who would provide a warehouse line of credit. So as example, how much volume do you think you can do in a year, says the investment bank. Well, let's say $100 million. Perfect. We're going to give you a warehouse line of credit for $100 million. And we're going to charge you 4% on that line. And once you originate $100 million of loans, we will take those loans and that will free up your warehouse line to start again.
There's Wall Street money. It flows into these entities. These entities make loans, package them up, give them back to Wall Street. At this point, Wall Street was even dictating the terms. And so they were telling them what kind of loans to produce. So Wall Street was really pulling the levers here for how this was going to happen.
Banks positively encouraged and indeed by contract often demanded that these refugees to the shadow financial sector make more predatory loans.
And that is why?
Because the officers of those banks made a ton of money if they could get the lender to make predatory loans.
So it meant reaching out to more borrowers who probably couldn't pay, borrowers who didn't have the right income, and it led to rampant fraud. So the push was coming from above, from the big Wall Street banks, and the pressure went down the chain to the mortgage broker at the street level, who was getting more and more pushed to make more loans.
Wall Street's partnership with the mortgage lenders evolved into a well-oiled machine, making executives on both sides filthy rich at the expense of their own institutions. This explains how millions of borrowers like Addie got caught up in an epidemic of mortgage fraud. But how did this contagion manage to spread into the rest of the economy, infecting pensions of people like Dan and Larry? It all comes down to one simple insight. Not satisfied with simply making money off of these toxic mortgages until they exploded, these bankers realized that they could get them off their books and make even more money by repackaging and reselling them to investors.
If you're a pension fund in America, or even if you're a high wealth individual, one of the safest and surest ways to make pretty good money from an investment was to buy mortgage-backed securities. That's where they just take all these loans and put them all together into a package. And then you as an investor are able to invest in that package of loans. And you get single, double-digit returns. It was always safe, because nobody made mortgages at one time in this country that weren't sustainable and weren't responsible loans. Nobody made loans to people who they didn't think couldn't pay them back.
Safe investments like bonds were not giving much return. And so there was money all over the world looking for places to park. And mortgages were generally considered safe. And so there was a huge appetite for these mortgage securitization packages. And so they just needed to feed that machine. It was just this huge appetite, and let's just feed it. So you needed a continual supply.
Traders who could be 25, 30 years old could be making $1 million, $5 million, and they were incentivized to push out bad loans to ordinary Americans because they could package and sell them and record big profits. And so the story of compensation that led to the financial crisis is actually not only an executive compensation problem, it's also a compensation problem on the front lines.
They were mortgage-backed security salesmen. You can actually see the demarcation lines where people were wildly packaging up mortgages and selling them off as mortgage-backed securities. And the way their bonus was set was how much revenue that they generated based on selling this crap. That's what you get paid to do. That's your job. Well, guess what? You're going to do that every day, all day. And you're not going to stop until you can't do it anymore.
Wall Street had constructed the ultimate financial fraud machine in which millions of low-quality, high-yield, predatory loans were generated by lenders across the country, brought into the bank, repackaged, and then sold off to investors as good investments. Yet as airtight as this system seemed to be, there was still the issue of how to get investors to continue to buy into mortgages that were becoming increasingly toxic. And so to ensure that customers never caught on to just how bad these mortgage-backed securities were getting, Wall Street turned to a third party to help them cover their tracks.
How do you get those people on the end to buy this crap? Well, you get the rating agencies, the credit rating agencies.
When I say the credit rating agency, I'm talking about Moody's, I'm talking about Fitch, and I'm talking about Standard & Poor's. They have another special place in hell for them because they have enormous amount to blame for this problem.
Their job was to look at each of these different securities and give a rating. Say, is this good, bad, crap, awesome? And what happened in the run-up to the financial crisis is that these rating agencies are giving AAA ratings to securities that did not merit the ratings.
80% of these high-cost loans, the loans that got us into trouble, 80% of them were rated AAA.
Highest rating imaginable. Like, how high is a AAA rating? That's the United States government debt. You want to buy a bond, right, from Uncle Sam, it gets a AAA rating.
What we learned ultimately looking at the bond rating agencies is that they didn't bother to check what house was backing up this mortgage for $100,000. Houses that today are probably worth $8,000 or $10,000. Nobody checked.
You could have put a first-year intern on a computer, sat him down and said, go check the appraised value of these properties. It would have required a minute on a computer to say 50,000, but wait, the mortgage is for 150. Wait a minute, how can you do this? And that was going on over and over and over and over. And the reason they refused to stop this, and they've been interviewed and they've talked about it, because they knew that if they didn't do the business, it would go to their competitor.
The way these rating agencies are paid is the banks pay them. If I'm at Moody's and they're like, oh, I don't know about these aren't as strong as we'd like, you say, that's all right, I'll go to Fitch. or I'll go in to S&P.
If they actually said what they thought these loans were, then they would have lost business. So when Countrywide came forward, or New Century came forward, or Bank of America came forward and said, we want you to rate these loans and we want you to give them an A rating, yeah, we gave them an A rating. And they weren't measuring anything except for what the lenders told them to risk.
One point in this madness, it was accounting for about 1/3 of their income. And I've heard people say, well, if we don't do it, they'll do it. So they did it. They all did it.
With the scheme fully implemented, mortgage-backed securities began generating billions in fraudulent revenue for the Wall Street banks who were selling them, translating into millions in bonuses for their executives. Yet while all of these mortgage-backed time bombs had now spread into the wider economy, it would still require one further innovation from Wall Street to take them from incendiary to full-on nuclear. Those innovations were known as derivatives. Wall Street often depicts derivatives in complex mathematical terms, making them seem so sophisticated that the rest of us mere mortals simply assume that it's useless to even try to understand them, which is just how Wall Street wants to keep it.
This stuff, yeah, is made to sound complex, but actually it's really very straightforward. Always the story is one of too good to be true. That somehow we take something that is really super low quality as an asset. That's something that is called toxic by the people in finance. And then somehow we transmute it like lead into gold.
Once a mortgage-backed security was created out of an underlying pool of bad mortgages, those securities would then be bundled even further into a kind of derivative known as a collateralized debt obligation, or CDO, which despite their AAA ratings, were just as rotten as the mortgages they were stuffed with.
CDOs are collateralized debt obligations. So what you do is take a whole bunch of mortgage-backed securities, and we're going to take the cash flow from them, and then we're going to create priorities as to who gets first dibs on the cash flow. And that first priority, that's going to get AAA. Now, that could work if you did a little sliver, right, and had huge priority, but that's not what they did. They did the opposite. They said the whole 80% of the deal gets a AAA and gets first priority to the cash flow. Now, that can't possibly work. Once the loan originations are fraudulent, once you resell them into the secondary market, they don't suddenly get pure. They have to end up still being fraudulent.
CDOs were often 60 to 90% filled with fraudulent mortgages, yet banks were selling them as 80% AAA. This not only defrauded investors, but made it almost certain that they would lose everything that they put into them. However, for every one of those long investors, there was a short, or a short-term investor, who had no interest in buying CDOs. And so for these folks, banks developed a completely different type of derivative.
What happened was there was an introduction of a product called a credit default swap. And that kind of sounds somewhat complicated, but think of them as insurance contracts. So just like you and I buy insurance on a home or a car, and we pay a premium, a regular payment. And if there is an accident of some kind, then we get the value of the home or the car given to us. Same kind of thing. You can buy CDS contracts on debt, on risky debt.
The analogy of credit default swaps to insurance is a good one. In fact, many CDOs had this insurance attached to them to help justify their AAA rating. However, advertising credit default swaps as insurance was misleading at best. In reality, they were something much more insidious.
So what does insurance actually require? It sounds a little technical, but it makes perfect sense. It's called an insurable interest. What that means is I can't get insurance on your home. Because if I could take out insurance on your home, maybe I might burn your house down, right? But you could do CDS without having an insurable interest.
Speculators were allowed to select mortgages or groups of mortgages that they did not own, but they thought were going to fail. And many banks said, oh, you want to insure against their failure? We'll give you that insurance.
Second thing, if it's insurance, the insurance company has to set aside reserves now so that it can cover the losses later when they actually come, right? AIG, because it wasn't insurance, established 0 loss reserves. I don't mean nearly 0, I mean exactly 0 in the way of loss reserves. And then it gets really crazier, but of course very understandable if you know that the guy who did it got huge bonus for every one of these deals. And his bonus would have been non-existent if he had set aside appropriate reserves. So guess what choice he's going to make? This is not genius. This is audacity.
Even then, there still wasn't enough product to generate the amount of profits that they were seeking from the system. So they came up with synthetics. And what synthetics are is not actual securities, it's bets on securities. There's already a mortgage-backed security out there. The Wall Street Bank will have a bet against it. They'll bet that it fails. And then the other side, the person who's taking the other side of that bet will say that bet that it succeeds. And that becomes something called a synthetic bet.
I'm going to bet the mortgages are failing, even though I don't own them. But I'm going to go to the window, place my bet like I would at a horse race on the failure of these swaps. Well, states like Nevada started saying, wait a minute, this is gambling. You can't have gambling. So if you banks are going to do this, you better come to Nevada and register as a casino.
So what you had were, in many cases, 5, 10, 15 bets on a single MBS, so that people say, well, why should the subprime mortgage market have crashed the whole system? Well, it wasn't just the mortgages defaulting. The mortgages default, the CDOs default, the CDSs default, but then these multiple bets in CDSs and synthetic CDOs default. So anyone who's holding anything related to that group of mortgages is toast.
This whole system was a rigged system. It was all designed to maximize profits for all of the different players. The only people who were not in on it were the homeowners who are getting pushed into homes they cannot afford with the devastating consequences that followed. And at the other end, the pension funds, the sovereign wealth funds, the municipalities, they're the ones who got screwed.
Across the country, cities and counties are going broke trying to keep up with public pension debt.
Retirement's at risk right now. The financial future for tens of thousands of people in the Buckeye State is looking bleak.
Tonight, we wanted to look at an issue that could face all Kentuckians very soon, which is the pension crisis.
Senior Corporal Jeff L. is retiring from the Dallas Police Department tomorrow after 30 years on the force. L. says he's leaving DPD because of the crisis at the police and fire pension system.
All those gains, 20 years worth of hard training by all the other FTOs and myself, it's all gone.
Is that tough to turn the badge in?
In 2008, 2 pension funds, Western Conference and Central States, lost over $21 billion total in that stock market crash. None, 0 to be returned to them. Local 707 in New York, their pension fund went broke. In Cleveland, Ohio, Local 17 ironworkers. You have truck drivers, you have warehousemen, you have grocery store clerks about to lose their pensions. They're going to have to make a definite decision. Do we pay our utility bills? Do we buy food? Or do we buy our medication? They're trying to live below poverty level right now.
Butch Lewis was a truck driver whose pension was managed by Central States Pension Fund, one of the largest in the United States. And by 2014, after 40 years of paying into the fund, Butch was on the verge of finally realizing the dream he had worked all those years to achieve, settling down to a comfortable retirement alongside his wife, Rita.
My husband took a labor job, a union job, because we knew he would make a great salary. We knew that there would be security. But the biggest thing is we knew that we would have a secured, guaranteed pension. There was never any doubt that that money was going to be there. Never any doubt.
That confidence was shattered in 2014 when the Lewises and the just under 500,000 other members of Central States found out that the fund was looking to dramatically cut everyone's pensions, in part because of the losses incurred after the crash of 2008. Butch was on the front lines as an activist fighting against these cuts.
My husband knew about the cuts were coming, so he became active in 2014, and he put together a committee in Cincinnati, and they started lobbying, going back and forth to Washington. But the finality of it came when October of 2015, he went to the mailbox and he brought the letter in, and he said, "Look at this, Reed. They're going to cut us 50%. And the color drained from his face. And he said, "I didn't work 40 years to end up with half of a pension, and we're going to do something about this." After we received the letters, many of his retiree friends, because he had a lot of contacts at the local because he was president, they called and told him the stories that after they paid for insurance and everything else, they would be living on $200 a month. People were going to be losing their homes. They couldn't afford to keep up with house repairs. They didn't even know if they were going to be able to pay for their medications. And the stress of that, my husband carried it very, very deeply within him. It caused him to have a massive stroke, and he died just 2 months after we received that letter.
There's never going to be another Butch Lewis, believe me. I would have liked to met Butch when I was 20 years old or 25 years old, because I would have been a hell of a lot better man than what I am.
It's hard. It's hard living without all that love. You know, it's almost torture. You know, but he made a huge difference while he was here, and that makes me very, very proud. This stress from this killed him. It killed him. It attributed to his death. I'm lost without him. He's so deep inside of me. He's in my soul. He's in my DNA. And I don't know how I'm going to make it without him. Once all this is over, I don't know how to make it without him. I'm so lonely for him. But I have to, there's too many people that are counting on me, and I can't think about me. I have to think about everybody else, and I don't want to let them down, and I don't want to disappoint them.
Rita, through unrelenting grief, decided to take up her late husband's cause and has been working tirelessly to get Congress to pass the Butch Lewis Act, a bill to save the pensions of hundreds of thousands of retirees across the country. But Rita's story had me curious. What, or more importantly, who, had gotten these Central States pensioners in this situation in the first place? As it turns out, it was Goldman Sachs, who, having been responsible for managing much of the fund in the years leading up to 2008, had heavily invested these pensions into mortgage-backed securities and derivatives. Even more curious, however, was that once mortgages began melting down in 2006, instead of pulling back on these investments, Goldman sank another $1.4 billion of Central States money into not AAA or AA, but single-A bonds, including mortgage-backed securities. Basically, Goldman was able to dump toxic assets from their own books into Butch and Rita's pension plan, ensuring that Central States pensioners would, in the end, have to pay for Goldman's fraud.
Goldman Sachs is part of the problem. They're selling to their very clients these loans that they know are a disaster. They know as a company, they agreed that from the CEO down, they agreed that these things were going south, that they were losing their value. At the very least, what Goldman Sachs should have done is stop selling these things. They don't do that. What do? They secretly do the big short.
With the housing market on fire, Goldman could see that every mortgage-backed investment out there was about to crash and burn. But instead of warning their investors of the impending disaster, Goldman decided to save themselves, offloading billions of dollars of these collapsing mortgages onto their own customers in a little maneuver that ultimately became known as the Big Short.
The Big Short, everyone knows that from the movie, but it was actually used by the chief financial officer at Goldman Sachs in an email describing the strategy that they took. And that strategy is secretly, we're going to make these bets that will pay off if there's a subprime meltdown.
I don't think our clients care, or they should care.
That you are betting against the security you're selling to them? They don't care?
You say betting against.
Yeah, you're betting. You're going short against the very security. You're holding a short position against the very security. I read you over and over and over again. You're selling securities.
The security itself delivered the specific exposure that the client wanted to have.
You don't believe it's relevant to a customer of yours that you are selling a security to, that you are betting against that same security. You just don't think it's relevant and needs to be disclosed. Is that the bottom line?
Yes, and the people who are selling it in our firm wouldn't even know what the firm's position is. And
oh, yes, they did.
It comes out in the emails that were subpoenaed that they're calling them shit loans, junk loans. I mean, they got it. They understood that these were a bad investment. They didn't tell that to their clients, those who are hiring them to represent their best interest.
And when you heard that your employees in these emails, when looking at these deals, said, God, what a shitty deal. God, what a piece of crap. When you hear your own employees or read about those in the emails, do you feel anything?
I think that's very unfortunate to have on email.
Are you embarrassed?
And very unfortunate. I don't.
On email,
please don't take that.
How about feeling that way?
I think it's very
So what's wrong is that they, on the front end, helped create the problem, and on the back end, when everything started to go bad, they profited in a way that hurt their own clients.
They put our money in investments that they knew that there would be a huge loss. And we can't get this money back. We have no way of recouping that money. We're retirees. We can't get a job. No one will hire us. We did not sign on for this. We did not ask for this. No one asks to see your life savings stolen.
Millions of pensions were put in jeopardy because of the crash of '08. And hundreds of thousands will be completely insolvent by 2025 unless something is done. But what about Wall Street bankers that got these pensioners, not to mention the rest of the country, into this mess? Shouldn't there be a price for them to pay as well? If you ask politicians in Washington, on either side of the aisle, as well as most of the media, the answer in the years since the crisis has been unequivocally no. And it is this narrative, that no high-level banker ever committed a crime in relation to the financial crisis, that has kept them from facing any sort of accountability for their role in it. But as the autopsy of the crisis continues, now over a decade later, and we learn more and more about what really went on inside the financial industry, that narrative is beginning to unravel.
This notion that the financial crisis was, one, unforeseeable, and then two, created solely out of recklessness and stupidity, and that there wasn't fraud and there wasn't crime, is absolutely wrong. It's dead wrong.
You'd have to have been a moron to have been in the industry and not realize that there was all sorts of bullshit going on. They're half filled out, numbers crossed out all over the place. They know these are not proper loans. They know what a proper loan looks like.
I mean, it was famously said by somebody, a whistleblowing on the credit rating system, that a cow could have come through and they would have given it a AAA rating.
There were some instances we know of where the auditors complained to their bosses and they were basically told, shut up, rate it investment grade. That's what we're being paid to do. So again, that's fraud.
And in fact, there were some emails several years ago that had an acronym at the end of it. And the acronym stood for I be gone, you be gone. And what that meant was, yes, we know this is a terrible deal for the client. We know it's a bunch of junk, but we don't care because we're getting paid now. So you be gone, I be gone, they're stuck with the bill, who cares?
While plenty of evidence of Wall Street's wrongdoing relating to the crash has emerged over the years, many still maintain that holding actual individuals responsible wouldn't be fair because just like a natural disaster, it was simply beyond anybody's ability to foresee or prevent. But no one who says that has ever talked to Chris Swecker. Chris Swecker was the head of the FBI's criminal division during the George W. Bush administration. And when it comes to the matter of how much responsibility industry insiders actually had in causing the crisis, he doesn't mince words.
You know, there are a lot of people that describe what happened in 2008 and 2009 as the black swan, the unexpected event, you know, the 100-year flood, when in fact this was 100% a man-made disaster.
Swecker first became aware that something was wrong in the mortgage market in 2003 while working as an FBI field agent in Charlotte, North Carolina, where mortgage fraud cases were spiking dramatically.
We started to see a lot of these systemic cases. And I realized that it couldn't just be happening in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I started paying attention to things that were happening bureau-wide in that area. And you could see Atlanta was getting a lot of activity, Miami, all the Florida offices. It looked like the Southeast was really exploding at the time. And then I got to FBI headquarters. I was promoted up to head the criminal division of the FBI. And I realized this is happening across the country. There's something going on here.
Whatever it was, Agent Swecker knew it could be disastrous if left unabated. He quickly put together a strategy to stop the mortgage fraud epidemic in its tracks.
What we decided to do is try to wake the country up to this mortgage fraud. So we did some high-profile takedowns, 2004 and 2005. We did some national level takedowns, and we coordinated our arrests to happen on a specific day. And we tried to splash it across the headlines. And we did that because we wanted people to wake up to it. We wanted to create some deterrent. We wanted to show that some people were going to jail for it and that we were on it. We're flashing neon lights because we see something.
Swecker and his team at the FBI fought day and night to put a stop to the flood of mortgage fraud that was drowning the country. But no matter how many frauds they shut down, new ones always seemed to take their place. And that's when they realized this fraud wasn't originating with the street-level brokers or small-time lenders. It was being fueled by the entire financial system.
What you found is all the components of that financial system had a role to play in committing fraud. You couldn't say, hey, it's just mortgage brokers. You couldn't say it's just the title companies or the attorneys. It's rating agencies, mortgage lenders, every individual player inside that food chain. And at the very end of the food chain were the CEOs, the COOs, the CFOs, the boards committing crimes. You know, we thought that La Cosa Nostra and the drug cartels were really smart criminals because they operated like business people. But now you're dealing with real business people who have been in the business world their entire career. Some of them are at the very top of a corporation running it and committing crimes. So, you know, you're matching wits now with the most sophisticated criminals in the world.
As Swecker and the FBI continued their investigation, all signs began to point toward a handful of Wall Street elite as the primary source of this fraud epidemic. And while enough public evidence exists to outline a laundry list of wrongdoing for any one of the biggest players, there is a case study to be made of one in particular. Meet Robert Rubin. He sat on the board at Citigroup since 1999 and was chairman in 2008. Under his watch, Citi showed every indication of being heavily involved in accounting control fraud and would eventually cost taxpayers $45 billion in direct bailouts, as well as another $300 billion plus in guarantees. But despite being the one in charge during this entire mess, once the dust settled, Rubin would go on to claim that he had zero responsibility for any of it.
I don't think that any major firm really saw the potential for the kind of crisis that we had. And then when you look back, you always look back and you look back and you say, well, these were obvious warning signs, but they're not obvious at the time. They're only obvious in hindsight, but there isn't a way that you're going to know what's in those position books. And I didn't know it when I was running Goldman Sachs, and you wouldn't know it sitting on the board of Citi either. You really are depending on the people who are there to bring you problems when they exist.
Despite his claims to the contrary, Rubin should have been among the first to see the writing on the wall when it came to the dangers of the investments his bank was selling. And that's because Rubin had already had a long history in dealing with the dangers of derivatives. Before joining Citigroup, Robert Rubin had served as Treasury Secretary under Bill Clinton, and it was during this tenure that he was approached by Brooks Liborn, head of the small regulatory agency known as the CFTC, with a dire warning about the derivatives market. Brooksley's former colleague, Michael Greenberger, witnessed this firsthand.
She told me in our early conversations that there was, we called it then, an over-the-counter derivatives market in value of about $13 trillion. And I thought to myself, $13 trillion, that's unbelievable. By May of '98, it was at $40 trillion. And by the time of the meltdown, it was about $600 trillion. Brooksley saw that these swaps, which were unregulated, had the potential of causing economic chaos.
Brooksley decided to issue what is called a concept release. This would notify Wall Street and other regulators that the CFTC was to consider placing some guardrails around the swaps market. Of course, Wall Street bankers did not meet this with enthusiasm.
They were totally opposed to it. That puzzled me. You know, what was it that was in this market that had to be hidden? Why did it have to be a completely dark market? So it made me very suspicious and troubled.
Desperate to prevent any kind of regulation over this multi-trillion-dollar market, Wall Street immediately sought help from Secretary Rubin, who they hoped, having recently left his position as CEO of Goldman Sachs for his place in the Clinton administration, would be their ally against Brooksley Born. And Rubin didn't disappoint, as he immediately called a meeting to try to dissuade Brooksley from her efforts.
We got called to the meeting. We weren't sure why this meeting was being held. And when we got there, Secretary Rubin announced that the purpose of the meeting was to convince Brooksley not to issue the concept release. One famous interchange was, Rubin said to Brooksley, "I think you don't have the jurisdiction to do this." And Brooksley said, "Well, I think we do. And my lawyers, I'm one of them, say I do." And Rubin said, "Your problem is you're listening to the CFTC lawyers. You should be listening to the bank lawyers."
Refusing to be intimidated, Brooksley stood her ground, which prompted Rubin and his colleagues to push this fight to a hearing before the Senate, who, to say the least, didn't appear to be in Brooksley's corner either.
I feel very strongly that we should not have one agency innovate in this area, and in doing so, create very substantial financial problems.
My question again is, what are you trying to protect?
We're trying to protect the money of the American public, which is at risk in these markets.
This hearing resulted in the Senate leaning heavily in favor of Rubin and his anti-regulation compatriots, spelling an end to Brooksley's effort to rein in the derivatives market. And that's when fate intervened. Long-term capital management, the nation's largest hedge fund, came to the brink of collapse and had to be bailed out in order to save the entire U.S. economy from going down with it. And the reason for this near catastrophe? Long-term had been trading in unregulated derivatives that had collapsed right underneath them. Precisely what Brooksley Born had been warning about.
Now, remember, this is not that distant from the failure of the savings and loan banks. And even the Republican members of the House Financial Services Committee were saying to themselves, hey, this looks like savings and loan all over again. How can you guys let this happen? Leach, who was chairman of House Financial Services, had been giving Brooksley a very hard time about the concept release. He wanted her to stop. Brooksley gets up to the table to testify, and Leach says to her, "Ms. Bourne, I think we all owe you an apology," because they could see that this near calamitous meltdown was caused by unregulated swaps.
Ms. Bourne, and you're welcome to claim some vindication if you want, but please proceed.
I certainly will not do so, Mr. Chairman.
Brooksley's concerns proved to be prescient, to the point that even Robert Rubin was forced to concede that she had been right all along. But although this seemed like a win for common sense financial regulation, it would ultimately prove a hollow victory. Because instead of using this as an opportunity to learn their lesson, the anti-regulation forces in Washington, less than a year later, would pass legislation to make sure that Wall Street would continue to have zero constraints in their trading of derivatives.
On December 15th, 2000, which was the last day of a lame duck Congress, Phil Gramm, who was senator and chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, has introduced in the morning of December 15th what became the Commodity Futures Modernization Act. The bill just didn't say to the CFTC, you can't regulate it. It said nobody can regulate it. So as a result of the Commodity Futures Modernization Act, you now enter into a period where there is no federal and almost no state oversight of the market. It was just nothing would apply, have at it.
This was huge for Wall Street investment banks, none of whom was a greater beneficiary than Citigroup, who at the time was the largest bank not just in the nation, but in the world. And so it might seem a coincidence that, after fighting tooth and nail to get this legislation to pass the Senate, Robert Rubin would almost immediately step down as Treasury Secretary, only to become a board member at Citigroup.
Robert Rubin said he wasn't completely comfortable with derivatives, but he felt he had to go along. That was not the way it was at the time. He was a very enthusiastic proponent of derivatives.
If Rubin was uncomfortable with derivatives, he had a funny way of showing it. Once he found his way onto the board at Citigroup, the bank, at his urging, massively expanded its derivatives operations, primarily based on mortgage-backed securities, from $6 billion in 2003 to $20 billion in 2005. When asked about this, Rubin cited concerns about falling behind rivals like Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, who were already pulling ahead in the mortgage-based derivatives game. If the near collapse of long-term capital management had been any indicator, it would have been absolutely clear to Rubin that this expansion of their derivatives operation posed a serious risk not only to Citigroup, but to the rest of the country. But as Rubin and the rest of Citi's executives stood to make tens and even hundreds of millions of dollars in bonuses off of these operations, they had plenty of incentive to keep them running full steam. And even as Citi began to flood the market with hundreds of billions of dollars in fraudulent mortgages, as long as Rubin and the board kept the bonuses flowing down to the trading floor, they knew they could count on the bank employees to look the other way. That is, until they crossed paths with people like Richard Bowen. Richard Bowen was an executive underwriter in Citi's mortgage division, based out of Dallas, and it was his job to make sure that the mortgages Citi was purchasing from outside lenders like AmeriQuest and Countrywide met the bank's legally binding quality standards. But once Richard stepped into this position in 2006, he immediately recognized that he had his work cut out for him.
It was obvious in the industry that the standards were declining. For example, in Countrywide, we identified that there were so many bad loans that did not meet our policy, it wasn't even worth our while to finish up the underwriting. As a matter of fact, we got up and walked out because we were kicking out so many mortgages that they wanted to sell us that it was no longer worth our time and even trying to bid on the pool.
Yet despite Richard turning down pool upon pool of bad mortgages, Citi, for whatever reason, was buying them anyway. Something wasn't right.
I discovered that someone very high up in the chain of command was reversing my underwriter's decisions. He would change them from turned down to approved. And we're talking $200, $300, $400 million worth of mortgages in each pool. We purchased many of those pools over my specific objections. And this started in June of 2006 through 2007. The volumes had increased and the rate of defective mortgages had increased to an excess of 80%.
Richard knew these mortgages had a high risk of blowing up on customers, not to mention the bank itself. But as he started to sound the alarm internally, he quickly found that his warnings fell on deaf ears.
I had been screaming about these mortgages for close to 18 months. Everyone knew about it. This was no secret. My boss, the chief underwriter, was equally concerned with regard to what I was finding. And he would take my warnings and he would put his warnings on top of them and send them on to an even greater distribution list. And this did not earn him any brownie points. As a matter of fact, in 2007, he had all of his responsibilities reassigned, and he felt compelled to take early retirement. And my new boss, the new chief underwriter, was not real happy with regard to the warnings that I continued to send. It was at that time that I knew I had to somehow get to the board of directors.
The cracks were already starting to show at Citi, as then Chairman Charles Prince was stepping down after reporting massive losses due to subprime mortgages. An emergency board meeting was called in order to appoint Prince's successor, who, according to newspaper reports, was to be none other than Robert Rubin. Upon hearing word of this meeting, Richard realized that this was his Hail Mary shot at getting the warnings he'd been sounding for over a year directly to the bank board.
So the next morning on Saturday, sitting at my kitchen table, I composed an email and I sent it to Robert Rubin, who the next day was named chairman of the board. I also sent it to the chief risk officer, the chief financial officer, and the chief auditor for the corporation. I said, come in here from the outside and investigate what's going on here, because everybody here already knows. I didn't hear anything that weekend. All of Monday, I'm sitting on pins and needles. No one knows that I've sent this email. On Tuesday, I received a phone call from the general counsel of the Global Consumer Group. And basically the gist of it was, don't call us, we'll call you. Goodbye. It was a very short discussion.
Richard's email not only warned Rubin and the board about the bad loans that cost Prince his job, but also that these loans were being sold to investors with false guarantees that they were good investments. Richard made these specific warnings because they explicitly told Rubin and the rest of the board that Citi was in violation of a specific white-collar crime law known as Sarbanes-Oxley. In a nutshell, Sarbanes-Oxley states that a bank cannot knowingly sell bad investments to customers and mandates that a bank leadership periodically sign a legally binding certification stating that they are in compliance with the law. And in fact, it was at this meeting where Robert Rubin was to be named chairman that Citi's CEO and CFO were to sign the certification. However, with Richard's warnings that up to 80% of the loans being purchased by Citi were fraudulent or purposely predatory in nature, signing a certification stating the bank's internal controls were intact would be knowingly making a false statement. Fully aware of this, they signed it anyway, an act that would constitute a federal felony.
I know that there were internal controls that were broken. I served notice in that email that they were broken. And the certification indicates that they are not broken.
Would seem that the chief financial officer and the people that signed the Sarbanes-Oxley certification disregarded those warnings.
It would appear.
We received a letter from Citigroup saying that the bank had acted promptly to address Richard Bowen's concerns and that the issues he raised were limited to his division and had little bearing on the bank's overall financial health. Citi said it didn't consider the problem serious enough that they had to be disclosed to investors and says the certifications were entirely appropriate. But 9 months later, Citigroup would need a $45 billion bailout and $300 billion more in federal guarantees just to stay in business.
Brooks Lee-Born went to war with Rubin over the dangers of derivatives in 1998. With the collapse of long-term capital management, he conceded that she was right. But once Rubin got to Citi, he pushed to massively expand their derivatives operations, which became so catastrophic that it led to the resignation of Charles Prince and Rubin's own appointment to chairman. Yet despite these losses, and Richard Bowen's explicit warning that Citi was selling tens of billions of dollars in fraudulent investments to customers every year, Rubin continued pushing Citi's derivatives operations until they nearly collapsed the bank in 2008. And while Citi almost went bankrupt, Rubin, despite foregoing bonuses his last 2 years at the helm, took home a total of $126 million during his tenure on the backs of these fraudulent derivatives before all was said and done. And yet, once he was called to testify before the Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission about his role in Citi's collapse, Rubin still somehow managed to plead ignorance.
I don't think that any major firm really saw the potential for the kind of crisis that we had. And then when you look back, you always look back and you say, well, these were obvious warning signs, but they're not obvious at the time. They're only obvious in hindsight, but there isn't a way that you're going to know what's in those position books. And I didn't know it when I was running Goldman Sachs, and you wouldn't know it's sitting on the board of Citi either. You really are depending on the people who are there to bring you problems when they exist.
People like Richard Bowen.
Yesterday, we had before us Mr. Bowen. He sent you an email. It was sent to, yes, you, Mr. Bushnell, Mr. Crittenden, and Ms. Howard. Did you ever act on that?
Mr. Chairman, I do recollect this. And that either I or somebody else, and I truly do not remember who, but either I or somebody else sent it to the appropriate people. And I do know factually that that was acted on promptly and actions were taken in response to it.
On January the 25th, Neil Berry, the attorney, calls me. He called me on my cell phone. And it was incredible. He was yelling at me. And he demanded, we want right now every single document that you've got. I said, Neil, look, they're on my computer. You guys own the computer. I haven't printed out all this stuff. I've just, tried to work with you. You come get my computer if you want it. It's yours anyway. It's the company's. I thought, holy smokes. All of a sudden, I was called to my boss's office and was told that there was a reorganization and all of my underwriting responsibilities were being reassigned. And at that point, I was basically told that I probably shouldn't come back in the office and I was being put on administrative leave. I would be basically laid off. So on the advice of attorney, I settled with Citi. I signed a separation agreement. Obviously, this was a culmination of what had gone on in the industry. I had seen a part of it within Citi, and it became very obvious that this was all part of the same puzzle that was falling apart.
We're talking about 70 billion every year of fraudulent stuff being pumped out and sold by Citigroup, which is one of the largest frauds in the history of the world. And Richard Bowen was blowing the whistle and saying, but, there's our massively fraudulent loans. You can't represent that these are good loans. We know they're not. We know that they were sold to us through fraud, and we know that we're about to sell them to somebody else through fraud. We're producing felonies, massive felonies, in a way that will have to be borne by the American people.
Over a decade on, it is still a mystery as to what exactly happened during the board meeting that Rubin attended and Citi executives were to have signed the Sarbanes-Oxley certification. And that's because the minutes of the meeting, being part of the evidence that Bowen turned over to the SEC, have been locked away in the National Archives. But not long after our initial interview with Richard Bowen, it was announced that after nearly 10 years, the archives would finally be making those minutes available to the public. So in November of 2018, we accompanied Richard to the National Archives to learn what really went on during that board meeting.
I just opened up 2 minutes of the Board of Directors meeting for November the 4th. Held on Sunday, November the 4th. And it talks about Robert Rubin being named chairman of the board. Now, this is very interesting. He was not named chairman of the board until November the 5th, the next day. By request, Mr. Rubin had recused himself and would join the meeting when appropriate. It appears that Rubin had recused himself from the meeting, and therefore he was not at the meeting to warn the board of the warnings that he specifically individually had received. This is a real revelation.
If Robert Rubin, having received Richard's email, had been present on the 4th, he would have been legally compelled to warn Citi's board and executives not to sign the Sarbanes-Oxley certification, knowing it to be a false statement. But by making himself absent, he avoided putting himself in a compromising situation while simultaneously allowing the other executives to plausibly deny any knowledge and sign it anyway. But what appears to have been an elegant sidestep by Rubin was not so well executed by Citi's chief auditor, Bonnie Howard, who, despite having personally received Richard's email and was present on November 4th, simply lied about the internal controls of the bank, giving her okay to sign the certification.
She says explicitly here that no frauds involving management or other employees had significant role in internal controls, knowing she'd received your email.
She had received my email the day before. Yes, that is a matter of record.
Just absolutely clearly, you notified her on November 3rd in that email directly, and that's her that's her duty to be able to review that or to make that known.
She is legally required to, because she legally, under Sarbanes-Oxley, reports to the audit committee of the board. Again, it's just fascinating, the machinations they went through to try to cover this up.
He said to Bob Rubin, we are packaging up mortgages that we know do not meet our credit standards, and we are selling them off as investments around the world. That is wrong. And Richard Bowen was right. That was wrong. But what happened? Richard Bowen gets fired. Bob Rubin makes $125 million and is hailed as the great Bob Rubin, former Treasury Secretary, deity of Wall Street. It's not right. The Dick Bowens of the world should be celebrated, and the Bob Rubins of the world should be prosecuted. And that's not happening.
Let me start by saying I'm sorry. Charles Prince, Citigroup's former CEO, and Robert Rubin, the bank's former board chairman, apologized for not foreseeing the financial crisis.
And I deeply regret that.
But Rubin, a former Treasury Secretary who earned $15 million a year as a Citigroup executive, insisted he played only an advisory role.
I was not involved, as you correctly say, in the management of the people or the personnel.
The panel wasn't buying it.
You either were pulling the levers or asleep at the switch.
Despite the bank's losses, Prince and Rubin each left Citigroup with tens of millions of dollars in compensation.
But what I didn't see, and virtually nobody saw, was that it wasn't only those excesses, but it was so many other factors coming together at the same time. And I think it's that extraordinary combination that led to this crisis.
It's kind of hard to believe. You're watching this stuff going on and you're thinking, don't these guys know that this is going to be a calamity for the country? They did, but they didn't care because they got their money.
It is my belief that nothing unethical and nothing illegal has happened, but I will tell you, if I discovered something like this, or if any senior person at Goldman Sachs discovered illegal or unethical behavior, we would eliminate that from the firm.
Would you consider stepping down if it happened under your nose?
Again, we're a big firm. We would just have to, and we police ourselves.
They knew at the end of the day, they knew it was a piece of shit. And they knew nobody was looking. They knew that the guy down below wasn't looking because he was just taking his points to get his commission. They knew that the next guy up that had the $5 out in the first place wasn't looking because he was going to sell it too. Everybody knew that everybody wasn't looking. Everybody knew that.
And they knew what they were doing. They knew they were committing fraud, and they didn't care because they were making money hand over fist. They were lying and cheating every step of the way. And if that's not a crime, I don't know what is.
These fraud schemes are utterly dependent on lying. Not lying a little bit, lying pervasively. This is the largest conspiracy of lies in the history of the world.
What am I going to do? Pray that it doesn't happen to you. That's what I do, because it'll change you. It'll change you. All because somebody is getting filthy rich.
There's nothing guaranteed in this country. And what happened to me, these Teamsters that are losing their pensions, is proof. I worked for that money. I worked hard. I worked hard.
Some days I don't want to get out of bed. Some days I don't want to live. They stole my life from me. How much money do you need? And how can you steal it from people who are honest, who believed in a dream and a promise? How can you sleep at night knowing that you stole their dreams and their lives and everything that they believed in? I'm supposed to pray for people like that they'll find their way, but I can't because they took my world, they took my life.
The actions taken by these bankers devastated the lives of millions of Americans across the country and millions more around the world. Something Richard Bowen, after his experience at Citi, was able to see coming long before it all came crashing down. And while he had lost his own personal battle with Citi, he was not about to sit quietly as his former employer put the rest of the nation in jeopardy. And so he took his case to the SEC, a government regulator with specific authority to put a stop to all these fraudulent operations before they caused a global catastrophe.
I testified for 2 days before the SEC in July of 2008, trying to achieve some sort of accountability for what had gone on. I gave them over 1,000 pages of documents. They also met with my former boss. He confirmed what I had told them. And they got pretty excited. They said, Mr. Bowen, we're going to pursue this. And then we had the bank bailouts. And ultimately, I never heard from the SEC again. What happened at the SEC, obviously they didn't pursue what I'd given them. They basically buried my testimony. And as it turns out, they not only buried it, they locked it up. The SEC has continued to refuse to release any of the 1,000 pages of documents that I gave to them. So as a result, all of that testimony is still in the National Archives.
The SEC was specifically designed to be the cop on the corner of Wall Street. Yet when Richard Bowen served them a massive fraud case on a platinum platter, they not only dismissed him, but they actively sought to suppress his testimony. But what Richard didn't realize was this wasn't just happening to him. Federal agencies across the board were shutting down any efforts to go after the banks, something Chris Swecker witnessed firsthand over at the FBI in his own investigation. An unexpected turn of events that led him to a disturbing conclusion.
In 2004, in my congressional testimony, I said, this has the potential to really create an economic crisis in this country. And later, that's exactly what happened. It turned out that this whole mortgage fraud situation, this dramatic increase in mortgage fraud cases, was the canary in the mine. It was the warning for the rest of the country. So yeah, we asked for more resources, but somewhere along the way in 2004 and 2005, a very significant request for white collar crime resources was chopped. And we got almost none in 2004 and 2005. I think it was the administration that cut out these white collar crime, financial crimes requests. There wasn't enough political will to really address the problem before and after the crisis. And we just, frankly, weren't putting enough people in jail. And we weren't putting enough high-level people in jail. Yeah, it absolutely occurred to some of us in the FBI and other agencies that the financial services institutions are heavy donors to political campaigns on both sides, Democrat, Republican. They salt their money throughout the political system, grassroots level all the way up through federal. They're not doing it because they're altruistic. They want a certain result. They want no regulation. They want no impediments to operating basically however they want to operate.
Arnold and his wife became the single biggest contributors to the Bush-Cheney campaign in 2004.
Is there any way to talk to you just for a minute about this?
Something he was not eager to talk about during the campaign.
Such a wonderful bringing up.
This is not a left or right issue. Frankly, what should have happened is some CEOs should have gone off to jail, so that captains of corporate America, the CEOs, the COOs, the CFOs, the boards become accountable so that this would never happen again.
Is there any indication that we're on track to prevent the next one?
No, I don't see any indication that we're on a track to prevent the next bubble, but I see a lot of evidence that there's a bubble coming. I've talked to developers, and I universally ask them if I find out that they're a developer. I say, think we got a bubble coming? And they said, absolutely.
Well, if I'm a cocaine addict and you hand me a big stash of cocaine, chances are I'm not going to pass it
You're going to
up.
binge. We're about to binge again.
All right, folks, that was episode 3. Hey, Roseanne. Episode 3, man. We're about to binge again. All right, here's Patrick. Did you hear that, Patrick?
Yeah.
We're about to binge again. That was powerful, man. That was powerful.
Well, let me tell you, Jay, here's the deal. I've watched The Con, all the episodes, a number of times. Every time I watch it, I get more energized. I get more upset. I get more, not surprised, but amazed at how these men can lie with a straight face, okay?
Not a bean of sweat on the brow either.
Ain't it? They can lie.
Yes.
Okay. And they will make up anything, make it complicated so that you don't understand. You tell me, do you bet on a team winning and losing?
No.
Do you do that?
No, not at all.
What if everybody, I don't even want to go. I detest these people. They are the best liars I have ever seen, except for some people that I know in Chicago. Okay.
Yeah, like
And-
for real. They were like Costa Nostra, man. And,
okay. Like, don't believe what's in front of you. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what they do. That's what they do. But I want people to watch this. I want to see how it's laid out, piece by piece by piece. Mortgage-backed securities. All the pieces. Just look at it. You can package garbage any way you want. It's still garbage.
Absolutely.
With that, Patrick, I give it to you and Jay. Go for it.
Let me just say one thing, man. I'm watching that episode. You want to know the thing that popped out to me the most is that I see now why they all want deregulation. You dig what I'm saying? And that's what this fucko is promising them. More deregulation. And so it's like, it's fucking bugs me out, bro. And I think this dude, Rubin, he knew this shit was coming. That's why he took the job in the Clinton administration so that he could prevent them from being able to do the regulation and then fucking just let it all explode like it did. But go ahead, Patrick. I know you are itching to let the people know what really went down because you were the guy who, exposed this whole fiasco.
Right, and we're gonna learn through you what you know, because we had, I think, at least on my side, 4 people watching, right?
Yeah, well, there's 79. We got 79 people watching. They're all watching on
good.
Twitter.
I'm glad to hear that, because how many people did we fucking got destroyed by this?
Millions.
Millions and millions.
No. Jay, I want Jay. Jay, how many people?
Millions and millions, tens of millions.
Okay, that's closer to the point. We're talking over 100 million worldwide, probably close to 150 million worldwide. At least 30 million people in the United States, okay?
God.
At least 30 million people in the United States. What did you say at the outset, Jay? What were you talking about? Half of the people at the barbershop were in support of who?
Donald Trump.
Okay, do you think those are the same people? Are they kind of in support of cops?
No.
Donald Trump supporters don't like cops?
Well, yeah, of course they do.
That's what I just asked. So they like.
Oh, my bad. I thought you were asking.
So they like cops. Do they like iron workers in the bar? The guys that are the tough guys that build things?
I would assume so. Yeah, they're all bravado. That's what the whole movement is.
Who did you see that we showed you got targeted by this in this episode? Who got crushed? Who spent their entire lives working to save money to provide for their families that they could actually have a retirement because they were the real deal? Who were they?
Butch Lewis.
They were white people that worked in the freaking places like industrial capacity, or cops, or iron workers, or salt of the earth types of people. Okay, so for all of
blue collar Americans,
people got stolen from. Okay,
yes,
they got stolen from, not just little old ladies who couldn't protect themselves because they didn't know how to read a contract, and nor would they ever in a million years understand the sophistication of what we're talking about. But okay, and I wish actually Roseanne Rabiola Mile, if you're on, I'd love you to answer this question. You probably had to go to the bathroom or something, but I'll ask her again when she comes back.
There she is.
I'm going to ask you both a question. I'll start with you, Roseanne. What is capitalism?
Risk, reward.
Okay, let's ask Uncle Jay. What is capitalism?
Risk and reward, like you just said.
It's money making money, but you have to take the risk to get the reward.
Absolutely.
How is investing different from gambling?
It's not.
Oh, it's supposed to be.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be, but it's not. You know what I'm saying?
Supposed to be. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. What did you get from William Cohen at the very beginning when we said what was Wall Street from the very beginning? What was the whole story of the genius of Wall Street? What was the thing that was how it was organized?
What I didn't see, I missed like the first 20 minutes of it.
Oh,
So
well,
was that in the right in the
you-
beginning?
well, you missed about what the whole purpose of the United States.
Oh well, that
is.
sucks. I had
I'm
to.
not making fun of you.
No. I get it. I get it.
Because this isn't something that you take lightly. If you want to, you want to understand the world you live in, and I appreciate, and to all of you folks watching this, boy, am I glad you're watching this. You know, I thought 4 people were watching this. This is the story in your hands that the entire system has hidden from you that led to what we were talking about at the outset, tens of trillions of dollars going to a tiny fraction of people's hands based on fucking over everybody from old ladies and minorities and the people who couldn't protect themselves. And yeah, attractive white women too, by the way. And then what? Cops and iron workers and teachers and this and that and all the rest. And by the way, I got to finish up. Don't let me forget, Roseanne, to bring up the Supreme Court when I get through this whole thing about what happened with the iron workers and the steel workers of America and the teachers pension that happened 2 years ago. Okay. But that being said, Jay, okay. So again, what was the whole purpose of risk? How was it designed in capitalism that created this country?
You take a risk and you get a reward, and if you don't do it legally and properly, then you should be held accountable for whatever happens.
Absolutely. But it was called, the way we set it up in the particular episode, we showed you all of the greatness of Wall Street in the beginning was aligned interest because all the partners had skin in the game. They would not allow a partner to do something stupid to be able to gamble all their money away because they were smart and they knew, because it was risk reward and money was very important to them, that they didn't do stupid things. Now, when you look through this whole situation of having people get into liar's loans and to have people lie on documents to get these things approved because they were incentivized and everybody was stupid in the process. Are you thinking to yourself, whoa, that's kind of interesting because we showed you the backstops. We showed you in episode 2, the underwriter, we showed the appraiser, we showed the UPAP codes, we showed you in this particular situation, the credit rating agencies that were supposed to dive into all the credit default swaps and the collateralized debt obligations. Were they?
No, everybody was asleep at the wheel, but I think it was purposely designed that way, though.
Well, of course, dude, because that's the con, because it's called control fraud. Who designed it that way? What happens in the mob? Who runs the show, dude?
The Godfather.
What we call them, the Dons, don't we?
Yeah, the Don, the Godfather, the Don.
I know that
the boss,
Donald Trump, right? Who likes to think his crowd size is this big. In comparison to the guys we just showed you, is that big, dude, just like his tiny hands. But he was playing the same exact game, by the way, through the 70s and the 80s, screwing over the people that built his buildings, all the people that worked for him and everything else. He did the same sort of situation because he was lying, stealing, and deceiving and everything else. But the bottom line is, was it illegal?
Yes, it was illegal for him to do that.
How do you know it's illegal based on this episode?
I don't. Well,
did you not see the top of the FBI in charge of criminal?
Well, yeah.
Did he tell you that this whole thing was a fucking crime?
Absolutely, but they prevented them from investigating or doing anything about it.
If the top guy at the top law enforcement agency can't,
make them go after these people,
then what does that tell you, Jay?
That it's rotten from the top.
Okay, so by the way, what did we also tell you? What do we know back? And by the way, I'm going to bring in Vladimir Putin in here. You'd like to bring up Vladimir. I like to bring up Vladimir because Vladimir got a little payback. Do you know what long-term capital management did to Russia, by the way? And do you remember we showed you the long-term capital management?
Yeah, it hurt them. It hurt them really bad.
That destroyed the Russian ruble, dude.
Yeah.
That's what turned the Soviet Union upside down and inside out. Did you know that?
No, when did that happen?
1998. That happened
1998.
in 1998.
Okay.
That was the beginning of the derivatives. What did Brooks
I thought 95 was the beginning.
That's when they started looking into it. But what was happening? What was happening in terms of how big when they started to look into it was the over the credit derivatives market? What was the number they said?
I don't remember.
In 1998, it was 300 trillion. They were like,
306.
No. 13 trillion. It was 13 trillion in 98. How much was it by the time we got to 2006? It
It was 600 trillion is what he said.
Really?
It actually morphed to 800 trillion. That's how we
Oh,
got to a
shit.
$4.5 trillion bubble in the housing market based on predation and liars loans and everything we showed you throughout the entire pipeline, which is what, Jay? Which is what? Fraud. What is fraud, Jay?
Illegal.
Right. And very important to say that because you remember famously, Hillary Clinton said, oh, yeah, fraud is shenanigans. No, fraud is not shenanigans, Mrs. Attorney, who was involved in the SNL crisis. It's criminal based on felonies. What happens if you get nailed with a felony, Jay?
You get prosecuted and you get found either not guilty or guilty, and you go to prison.
And you get all of the money clawed back that you stole, right? That's what would happen to a normal person. Did we claw back $600 trillion from Wall Street, bro?
No, we didn't get any of it back.
So what's that telling you, Jay?
That somebody hijacked the whole thing. It's a big heist.
How about the whole fucking system? So here's the thing, man. What about the superheroes? We keep showing you superheroes. Did anybody not know this was going on, by the way?
Yes, Richard Bowen.
What did Bowen know, by the way? What did he actually do that's so unbelievable?
He explained to them that they knew what they were doing. Like he laid it out. Like they knew what they were doing
based on the law. So he's the chief underwriter. He's where the buck stops. He's doing his job. He's looking at all of these different liars loans. He finds out that how much was Citi selling a year in these mortgage-backed securities, dude? To all the pensions, all the teachers, all the hardworking Americans.
90, I think one number was like 90 million, 1.3 trillion, something along those lines.
You're somewhere lost in between, but it was 70 billion a year for that company. But it was ultimately CEO'd, helmed by none other than a guy by the name of Robert Rubin. Robert Rubin came out of where? Where did he come from?
He came from Clinton's administration.
Before he was the Secretary of the Treasury, who was he?
He was at Citigroup.
Goldman Sachs.
Who
was selling these derivatives and who did The Big Short? And by The Big Short, anybody ever see the movie The Big Short with Brad Pitt and Christian Bale? And the wonderful story about, to give you an idea of how this whole thing went down, it showed you what I just showed. So in The Big Short, in that wonderful movie that everybody's like, oh my God, and then it's like, categorized as a comedy when you look it up to rent it, right? Is this kind of funny? Do you think this is all funny?
Absolutely not.
No, it's not kind of funny. It's kind of funny that
disgusting.
It's kind of funny that nobody knows what the fuck is going on. But I'll tell you this, man. So ultimately, Richard Bowen is on the cutting edge. He's trying to end a $70 billion a year fraud that's blown up millions of regular people. He's a superhero. He puts his life on the line. He puts it all on the line. He works within the law with Sarbanes-Oxley. He sends all of the information to all of these guys that are the ones that are creating all this stuff because their job is to stop it based on Sarbanes-Oxley once they have the information that all of the critical controls aren't aligned because of the information that he's given. What do?
They fucking fired him.
They lied. And they fired him. And they circled the wagons. And then when they got under investigation, did anybody call them out for that?
No. The Senate did the Senate did. They told them that they knew what was going on. But
let's hit the rewind. Let's hit the rewind on that. So two Jewish guys on two sides of the spectrum, right? You got Lloyd Blankfein from Goldman Sachs, right?
Yep.
Blankfein do when Senator Carl Levin called him out because he had the information. Did you see that little quirky look on that freaking jitball's face, Lloyd Blankfein, when he was trying to say that one side of the company didn't know what the other side was doing, and then Levin's got the emails, and he says, "What you were selling dog shit."
Yeah, absolutely, it was dog shit,
but intentionally.
Yeah, they knew. Everybody knew.
But who were they selling it to, by the way? Who were they selling it to, dude?
The American people, the pensions.
They were selling to the teachers. They were
hedge funds.
They were selling to the iron workers. That's what we showed you there, right?
Hedge funds.
Arthritis in his hands. Did you see the stuff that he had to go through 40 years? Like young people out there watching this, they're like, hey, you know what? My whole life is on the fucking phone. I'm going to go watch some chick on a pole dance, and I'm going to act like I know what the fucking world is like. Guess what, people? You've just begun your life. You don't spend your life working your entire freaking life to get to the end where you sacrifice
and you lose it all.
Didn't they steal it from you?
Well, they
And what are you
steal it
gonna
from
do?
you. You don't lose it. They steal it from you.
Yeah,
Butch
what
Lewis.
are you going to do if somebody comes and steals your wallet right now? You going to let them? You're going to go,
No,
hey,
absolutely not. But they
well, then
couldn't do
what the
anything
hell are
about it.
people doing, dude? Is the question. So the thing is like this, right? So you got Bowen, he lays it all out, but who does he lay it out to? He lays it out to the Securities and Exchange Commission. He lays it out to the Federal Crisis and Inquiry Commission. He lays it out to the Department of Justice. They're not actually deciding to enforce the law. Remember what I told you at the beginning, that we've got an apparatus of $90 billion a year and tens of thousands of employees to do the job? That what? Who did the job?
Richard Bowen was the only one to do it, but they
Who put it
didn't
on camera and put it in context to everything else?
What'd you say? I didn't hear that.
Who put it on camera and context to everything else with all the other information that nobody knows about? Who did it, dude?
Patrick Lovell.
That's right. Patrick Lovell did it. And I'm coming here and I'm barking into this microphone because I'm trying to wake people up to understand it's not rocket science. It's racketeering. Are there a lot of elements in this whole thing, Jay?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you need to remember a lot of elements to be able to fly this plane, or do you need to come away with one thing, understanding it?
You need to come away with one thing, understanding. But there are a lot of there's a lot of shit.
But what do you need to know here, Jay? What do people need to know?
They need to know that these people stole.
They're above the law, that they stole from the regular people. They destroyed the American dream, and they're above the law. And more importantly, not even more importantly, what am I talking about? Nothing's more important than the revelation of a whole system being above the law. But here's the irony, dude. They're above market forces. Did they all go away after they collapsed based on gambling?
They got jobs. No. Rubin got to walk away with $124 million.
That's right. How much did Citigroup get for this?
I don't know the exact number, but I know it was a lot.
Would it surprise you? $3.5 trillion?
Wow. Who got the 1.3 trillion?
$3.5 trillion is what they got, dude. That's what they
crazy.
got. What do you think it was important for them to make sure nobody heard Bowen?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Because what's the most important thing in the United States?
Knowing the truth.
Okay, yeah, but I'm being sarcastic with the set of the question. Money is.
Yeah.
Hand over and pimp, poor junkie, and parasite their way to money because they'll lie, steal, deceit, and whatever it takes to keep their mouth shut, because they're the rats, Jay. Not the guys that are the heroes that try to bring down criminals. The rats are the guys that are actually carrying this out. That's who they are, okay? And they're in complete control, Jay. Is that cool with you?
No, not at all.
What else did you see in there, brother?
I saw that there's the thing that bothered me the most is that these guys could sit in front of the Senate and lie and not show any kind of remorse or anything until they were forced to with their bullshit apologies after it was found that they knew exactly what the fuck they were doing. You know what I'm saying?
Because it was a fucking rigged game from the beginning. They knew
Absolutely.
the whole thing was bullshit. They held a gun to Congress's head and said, "What are you going to do? Take me down? Shoot! I'll fucking take everybody down." That's what they did, dude. That's what it's called. That's why it's called too big to fail. That's systemically important banks because they control everything. But is that capitalism, dude?
No, not at all.
It's socialism for the rich, dude, that are stealing from everybody else. Now, if you're not absolutely fired up, ready to torch the place down, or at least getting busy and trying to spread the truth after watching this, I don't know what else to say. Because the thing is that we got quashed by BlackRock. Why? BlackRock's the most valuable company in the world. That's basically the United States Titanic here, because those guys were the guys that went from practically nobody knowing who they were, although everybody in business did, but in terms of the general public. But now they got $9 trillion out of assets under management. Do you know who rebuilt the United States with the stolen money from the Federal Reserve?
No, who? BlackRock?
That's who. Wow. That's why nobody knows the con. That's because they ended up buying HBO and Netflix and the rest of them, right? Because they're on the board of directors of everybody, and everybody gets their funding from Wall Street. Do you think any of these goons in like executive offices at HBO or Netflix or wherever, people who like claim that they're like real people and people that that care for the regular guy, or like Oprah Winfrey, for example, right? Because she cares for what was the story she told a few years ago Rosa Parks and so on and so forth. She really cares about Addie Polk and the tens of millions of people that got fucking crushed, right?
Absolutely not. Because if she did, she would have done a show about it.
Well, they quashed this whole thing, dude, because she was also involved with it because our friend from Chicago told me that she's been into all sorts of like, gerrymander, or, what's it called? Gentrification.
Yeah, gentrification. Well, the whole thing in Hawaii that just happened with the fires.
Okay, that and then some. Look, I mean, guys, please, man, please, America, please don't be don't be so fucking stupid. Don't be so naive. Don't buy a bill of goods. Who do you think benefits right now from all this bullshit with the presidential election right now? Is anybody focusing on the people that control the system?
No, we're all focused on Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, but we're not paying attention to what the Senate and the Congress is doing. Huh?
What is Kamala Harris saying? She wants to do what? Turn the page, right? She wants to
turn the page.
Etch-a-sketch the last 15 years. Oh yeah, that's convenient when those guys are the ones paying you $500 million or whatever to be able to, because those guys they could go one way or the other. It doesn't matter because BlackRock basically runs the Biden administration, and Blackstone, and they were both partners, basically runs all of the financing for the Trump campaign. It was Larry Fink and Steven Schwartzman. Okay, they got the whole thing locked up because of why, Jay? Because they got $71 trillion to hijack the government, to be above the law, to be above market forces, and basically skull fuck the United States. Listen, man, I've had enough. I want millions of people to get fired up. I want them to go to our website at www.thecleannewdeal.org. I hope you look at our swag. We've got unbelievable swag. We got buttons that say, when you've got the truth, you're bulletproof. Don't lie. Stop lying. Stop buying lies. This is good for the Boy Scouts. We need everybody in the country wearing a hat that looks great that would look great on Tim Walsh that says, the Clean New Deal. Look, man, here's the things that we're trying to set up right now as we go into the last two episodes of the con. Listen, what we've got to do is we got to get millions of people to simply ask Tim Walsh, who's a very good guy. He's a high school teacher. He taught high school football. He taught history, and he served in the
National Guard
for 5 years.
Yep,
So we need millions of people, no matter where he goes, because he's an honest guy, and I don't think he'll ever lie. I think he's going to be in a very awkward position if we catch him with this. But we need millions of people to ask him this very simple question. Hey, Tim, did you ever teach your students throughout your history of being a teacher that the United States was constructed to be able to prop up billionaires with free money illegally to be above the law and market forces so that they could completely betray the United States? Is that what you taught your students? And if so, why? And if not, why? What do you think, Jay?
I think that he would be honest and he would make sure that, you know what I'm saying, he would look into it. I don't think he would. I don't think he would just not. I don't think he would just not do anything about it. I mean, I don't think he wouldn't answer the question.
Tell everybody you talk to from now on that's what we need to ask Tim Walsh, and we need to be able to get everybody to the CleanNewDeal.org. And you should
you think that he's gonna you think that he's honorable enough to do something about it at the end of the day?
We had thousands of people asking that every day from now to sea to starting sea, and if everybody understood what the con reveals and ultimately what we do in the CleanNewDeal.org, look, we got to create the Clean New Deal. What is the Clean New Deal? Based on what I just said, you got to understand 4 questions that actually have a relationship that tell the country what we are versus what we think we are. The whole thing, the whole propaganda, this advertising of this 2024 election, and I am voting for Kamala no matter what, okay? But the bottom line is that you've got to understand, what is qualified immunity? What is the relationship between qualified immunity and the Electoral College? What is the Electoral College in relationship to presidential immunity? And then ultimately, what is the relationship between all 3 of those with the illegal use of Federal Reserve Act 13.3, providing tens of trillions of dollars to this power apparatus?
Wow.
What is it? What is it if a cop can shoot somebody and not have to prove really anything? They could just
bullshit.
Right? They could be a death squad, right?
Yeah, that's bullshit.
So that means
Everybody should be held accountable for their actions.
There you go. Because that would mean that the United States actually fought a revolution against tyranny to create the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and all of the wars that happened in between in order to form a more perfect union to get us to the progress, the real trust busting and the New Deal and everything. Listen, we have been fighting this battle throughout history. It goes back to the time of Jesus. It goes back to before that. This is what Jesus was battling. And it goes on and on and on, and it never ends. But what we're talking about in 2024, Jay, is a tiny group of people that have complete control of the world because of what I'm telling you. It's the word. And I always think of Elon Musk as a bad Bond villain. He likes to pretend like he's Spectre, but he's a fat Spectre and a fat piece of shit because he's a welfare queen living off the dole of the real taxes and the real incentives and the real government expenditures to do what? To lie to everybody?
Absolutely.
Get away with it?
Well, let me ask you this. So why does he get all of that subsidized money that he gets, and then he's allowed to do what he does with this Twitter app, and now he's like supporting Trump, wants to be in his administration, and
we didn't know Elon was an apartheid freakhead back when I think he was buying into Tesla, and right after the great financial crisis, the government spent, when Obama came in, an additional $700 billion on clean energy projects and the reboot and stimulus to try to create things. We had to move in the right direction, and Elon and Tesla did magnificent stuff, even though as you go on throughout the entire history of the company, there's a lot of shenanigans, illegal fraud based on pump and dump schemes and a whole lot of other things, but especially during COVID, that ultimately sent Elon's net worth like to the moon, baby, right? Because he went from like 70 billion to 100 billion, now he's 240 billion, right? Based on all of this stuff that we're talking about, because of this, the nature of how the Fed works. The Fed was always propped up initially to create price stability through 2% interest and full employment, right? That's to keep the economy moving in the right direction, and has monetary policy, and it can do all sorts of stuff. Because why, Jay? Because we're a superpower, because we've got nuclear bombs, we've got carrier groups, we could deliver anything anywhere we want to, we've got resources up the wazoo. This isn't fake money, bro. We have real fucking value, but it's the modicum of exchange. And as all of these stuff are being propped up in the way you work with finance, particularly in real estate, that you can use that to launder and hide money for a lot of rich billionaires illegally that do this at the expense of everybody else. Who's in control, Jay? Are we the people in control?
Absolutely not.
Who's in control, Jay?
The top 1%, the billionaires,
right?
The wealthy, the rich.
So tell me, as we close this out, what question are we going to ask Governor Walz?
We're going to ask him if, when he was a teacher, would he tell his students that it was okay for a small fraction of the wealthy to be able to control everything?
Use billionaires and what
billionaires.
And
small, well, it's not a small fraction anymore. I mean, we've got a bunch of billionaires now. We didn't always have that, but
here's the other side of it. That's got to be most important, because if they're above the law and they're above market forces, what does that make them?
Criminals.
Makes them kings, dude. What was the United States born to revolt against?
The kingdom, the British, the British.
That's right. Rebelled against empire to
tyranny,
do what,
and we didn't want to pay taxes anymore. We were tired of giving all of our wealth to the king.
We rebelled against tyranny.
Absolutely.
And empire to create empire 248 years later. Is that cool?
No, not at all.
Only
for it to just it all fucking come circle. We're dealing. The new generation is dealing with what they dealt with in the beginning when they fought the British. It's all happened again.
Are we a democracy, Jay?
No, we're not.
We're not a democracy. Are we a capitalist country, Jay?
No, we're not.
No, we're a communist country for the rich people, okay? Or
absolutely.
What we are is a corporate fascist state undergirded by a criminal syndicate that uses the full faith and credit of the United States to guarantee the mafiocracy that is now fueling fascism. That is not okay in America. That's what happens with death squads in South America and all the other crap that happens around the world. We need to wake up tens of millions of Americans that believe in liberty and justice for all, predicated on the integrity of law. What is the purpose of the citizenry, Jay?
The what?
What is the purpose of the citizen?
What is the of us? What's our purpose? Our purpose is to hold people accountable.
There you go, baby. There you go. Because when you have, absolute power creates absolute
corruption.
Corruption, right?
Yeah.
So when a group of people discover plunder, they end up creating a legal code to glorify it and a moral code to, a legal code to authorize it and a moral code to glorify it. Dude, what's the difference between law and order and fascism? Do you know?
No, I mean, law and order is what people have to live by, and fascism is a group of people who tell you what to do
at the butt of a gun. Listen, man, the difference between law and order and fascism is the integrity of the system, dude. What did we just show you? Is that the integrity of the system? Did the media tell you this? Did anybody in government tell you this?
No, absolutely not. And that's not the integrity. It seemed to me that Clinton, Bush, they all knew this shit was going to happen, and they just kicked it down the can.
Yeah,
they just kicked the can down the road.
And most importantly, Alan Greenspan, because he was they called him the maestro at the Federal Reserve, and he came out of the savings and loan crisis, the largest bankruptcy at the time with Charles Keating during the early 90s, and they made him the chairman of the Federal Reserve. How's that for frickin' irony? Okay. Are we now looking back kind of surprised that it happened?
Yeah. How did these people fucking blow everything up and then get these jobs in government?
Okay. Why would 70 million people vote for Donald Trump, dude?
Well, I don't know why they would vote for him. I know I'm not.
Because they don't know how things work. That's why. Because they're like, that guy's white and I hate the other guys. You know what? And a lot of these guys, ultimately, though, this is the most important thing about to say to your Trump friends where you go get your haircut at the place on the corner of whatever in Buffalo, right? The bottom line is
448 Amherst Street.
Remind them that we showed them it was cops, it was teachers, it was iron workers, it was military people, by the way. It was everybody blue collar that got set up, and a lot of those guys became MAGA. Do you think they might be a little bit pissed off at the establishment for creating this?
Wow, I didn't think of it like that.
Right, so they are justified. But here, when
they're angry at the wrong people, though.
But the thing is, they made a Faustian bargain. What is a Faustian bargain, Jay?
I don't know.
That's a dance with the devil, dude. The greatest trick the devil ever played was to convince the world he didn't exist, because he was pissing on everybody's head, telling them it was rain, because everybody played the fool, because they're all tools of the fool circus, bro. So here's the story, man. If you live in light, if you live in truth, you live in light. If you live a lie, you're depraved. Okay? If you have the truth, you're bulletproof. If you live a lie, you're going to die. Inside you die. Stop lying. Stop buying lies. We got the truth. Spread the word. Truth is marching. The Clean New Deal. www.thecleannewdeal.org. We've got to rip the power back from the corrupt, and we need to set things straight by regulating. What do you do back in the old neighborhood when dudes got out of line?
You made sure they got back in line. You made sure no one hurt women or children.
That's it, man.
And if anything happened to women and children, then there was a big problem.
Let me ask you.
That's all I'll say about that.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think most of the people you hang out with, were they rooting for Bluto, or were they rooting for Popeye?
Always rooting for Popeye.
Okay, so what did Popeye do?
Ate a spinach.
He ate a spinach, opened up a can of whoop ass. That's the truth.
Absolutely.
That's the truth, man. When you have the truth, you are bulletproof. Who's ready to rise, roar, and revolt?
I am. I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. And there's 95 people watching, so hopefully we were able to convince, if not all, half, some, whatever. And like I said,
I encourage all of you to reach out to me if you have any questions. Enjoy.
Absolutely. Give them your. Yep.
But I'll let Roseanne take us home.
Okay.
I want everybody who's watching, share this live stream. Share it. Watch the con. You can start with episode 1. Jay's got that. We've got that on our YouTube channel. It's called Patrick Lovell, Truth Bombs the Con. But it's real easy. You go, you know, Jay, go follow Jay. Jay is going to like, reply, reshare. What do they call it?
Repost,
retweet, whatever.
Yep.
Okay. Follow Patrick. Follow me. The three of us, okay, look at all the people, just the three of us, and all of you, 95 out there, can reach. You never know who you're going to get to. Never, never, never. That's a follow us.
Let me add this piece real quick too. And it's so great that you all came, and Jay, thank you for doing this. You got to become a nuclear reaction to the Big Bang of Truth. Look, man, you got to go. If you missed the first 2 episodes, go back to www.thecon.tv. We made it free because all the American people buy our lives. Listen, I'm looking for honest people. I'm looking for the people that when the end comes, and if there is, a stairway to heaven, do you think it's going to be for the wicked?
No, absolutely not. It's going to be for the righteous.
That's right. So this is called the righteous grind. And you know what? I never stop, dude. I never stop for justice, liberty, justice for all, because I hate liars. I do. I hate them with a passion, and I want to take them down to their knees. And we can do it if there are millions of us in unity.
Absolutely.
You
go ahead and give them.
You got the power. Do it.
Give them your Twitter handles and any kind of Facebook handles or anything like that, so that if they want to reach out to you directly, they can.
Yeah, the only thing that I do on social media these days is Patrick Lovell 1 on Twitter, but we do have the CleanNewDeal on Facebook, even though you could reach out to me on Facebook. And I've got an account on Instagram and all the rest. But the only things I'm doing the political stuff on is really here and on YouTube, Twitter. Patrick Lovell, Truth Bombs the Con. Yep. And of course, you can just reach out to me and ping me, or reach out to me through Jay. And if you want to volunteer and be involved and learn more, we could use you quickly. Look, the end game is here. Look, here's the Clean New Deal in a nutshell. Okay, I'm just gonna bust out all the answers real quick. 1, we got to get a new Glass-Steagall. Glass-Steagall is a law that we had before when we learned all these lessons through. You called me the consigliere back there. When a guy who was from Sicily, like you and Roseanne, a guy by the name of Ferdinand Pecora, who the government put into position to do the investigation, and this guy was bright. He wasn't an expert in finance, but he was an expert in the mafia. This guy figured out all the schemes, and he figured out everything that was going on during the Great Depression that created the Great Depression. And that's how we ended up with what was known as Glass-Steagall, which created the Securities and Exchange Commission, which were the cops on the beat that were supposed to keep all this stuff in check because they're the financial cops. Get it?
The SEC or
that's the SEC. Okay. So we need to create a new Glass-Steagall. There's ways to do that. We need to end Citizens United. That's legalized corruption. You may have heard Citizens United and go, huh? What is that? Isn't that the thing about dark money? Hey, let me ask you a question, Jay. Does anything good happen in the dark?
No, not at all.
Okay, so it lacks a little bit of subtlety, doesn't it? So that's
absolutely. No one should be able to donate to a politician unless their name is given and who they are and how much they donated.
But guess what? The
they do it every day. I know.
The politicians are the lowest ROI, return on investment, because they're all pimps, whores, junkies, and parasites. Man, they're all
bought and paid for.
Yeah, they literally are. Just like we're a third world country, these maggots selling us out left and right. And that's on both sides of the aisle. Okay.
They sell us democracy, but we really, in like you said, it's like,
corporate fascism.
Yeah, corporate fascism.
But then the third thing we got to do, and this is a key consideration, is that we demonstrate that these guys got $71 trillion illegally. And I'm going to have all of that cited and everything else on our website. We've got all of the information that goes all the way to the Sullivan and Cromwell of the CIA. This whole thing, soup to nuts. I can go against any economist in the country, any expert, in law, because I've got the receipts. I've got the whole freaking thing. And not only that, why do you think I was working with the FBI, DOJ, and SEC and all of the rest of it? But in the end, once you get to understand that the $71 trillion was stolen, are there better ways to spend $71 trillion, Jay?
Absolutely. And they're not going to want us to know that they stole $71 trillion. You know what I'm saying? To do what they did with it.
That's right, because they keep pissing on our heads telling us it's rain. So it's time to take out the sand wedge and go freaking golfing for dollars, right? because dude, there's a lot of problems in the world that can be solved with $71 trillion. To put that into perspective, the sum total of everything the United States is in the economy based on GDP is about $25 trillion a year for over 350 million people. We're talking $71 trillion to that many people, Jay. So that's we got to blow that to the moon. We got to blow that to the moon. And that's how they were able to buy the government, by the way. And then once you get through that, then you got to end all the stuff that makes us not what we're supposed to be. You got to get rid of qualified immunity. You got to get rid of presidential immunity. You got to put 13 justices on the Supreme Court to be able to swing.
Don't forget, you wanted to say something about the Supreme Court.
Well, you got to do that to be able to at least hold back all the corruption that's been going on. But we got to make the Supreme Court justices accountable too. The fact that they're not accountable is just insane.
It's insane that they're
And then so once you get through that, then you've got the final three pieces, right? Which are, I said in qualified immunity and presidential immunity. The last thing is the Electoral College. The Electoral College. You know how Republicans like to say that we are a constitutional republic.
Yeah, but we're not. They love to say that. They say, "Oh, we're not. We're really not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic.
What does
so we
that
shouldn't
mean?
be worrying about democracy."
What does that mean? What does that mean?
It means that smaller states hold the same amount of power as bigger states.
Bingo. So what it is, it's a manipulation of power. It's the minority. Yeah. The minority can actually be in power. So all of this stuff is a perversion. So you got to think it relay a lot of information on you. But I'm going to just give you one last metaphor so you can all think about it. All right, and then you can put yourself in the picture of what you would do once you know. Right. So you go to your house of worship, and you go there because you want to be with God and you want your family there. It's a place of protection. You're thinking about how everything that happens in this world, that you give yourself up to be able to go to a higher plane and everything else. And then you find out that the guy who's been in position of power to be able to, direct everybody and everybody deserves his respect, you find out that in the back room, he's raping your kid or somebody else's kid. If you found out, what would you do, Jay?
Kill him.
Okay, or would you be quiet? How many people were quiet? How many people were quiet, Jay?
No one would be quiet if they found out someone was raping their child.
Okay, well, you would think a lot of people. Well, hey, let me ask you, Roseanne. Did a lot of people stay quiet on this information throughout centuries?
Most people, okay, the vast majority stayed quiet. When I said something to my mother, she didn't believe me.
Wow, really?
Yeah, so you got courage, Jay, and you're not a dummy, dude. That's why you're doing what you're doing. You're naturally equipped for this. I'm going to leave everybody with this last thought, okay? All right, I'm going to leave you with it. I'm just going to go off on this tangent, and I got to end it right here because this is all you really truly need to know, right? So listen, we got two columns of our soul. You got character, integrity, honesty, and integrity. And then on this column, you got hypocrisy, duplicity, and complicity, which means you could be a diabolical, lying villain. Everybody goes one way or the other depending on the circumstances, right? That's reality. But this is what you've got to understand. Everything is on the line right now. You can't be quiet. You can't put your head in the sand. You can't be complicit in all of this insane rampage of predation around you when you've got the truth. You cannot stay quiet. You can't stay coward. You've got to rise with the power that makes you free from the burdens of cowardness and weakness. And that's the whole purpose of the universe, my friends. Listen, like I told you before, the universal truth is simply this: light propels forward from a supernova to overcome the darkness. That's what it does. That's what it's done throughout the entirety of the universe. So if you don't need a more of a crystal clear sign that this is time for you to rise, war, and revolt and spread the truth like your life depends on it, because it does.
Wow. Powerful. Deep. Anything, Rose?
Just follow us, share us. When you have the truth, you're bulletproof.
Yeah.
Remember,
Once.
Jay, it's not rocket science. It's
no, it's not. But you will have to watch this. I'm going to tell you right now. Once I end this show here, I'm going to go watch it again. I'm going to go watch I have to keep watching it. Like like it's a lot of information, but it's like it is once your eyes have been open to it, bro, you can't just, like you said, put your head in the sand anymore.
Okay,
Once you've shown the people what it's about, if they choose to fucking put their heads in the sand, then they deserve whatever the fuck they got.
That's
they
right.
They got
right.
coming.
That's
But I
right.
got 4 daughters. I got 4 daughters and 2 granddaughters, and I'll be damned if I'm not going to do everything that I can do in my power to make sure that they have a safe.
Amen. And we know that.
Yeah.
Let me finish with this, because I said
Go ahead.
I said before that was my last lines, but
that's fine.
It's this simple, people. Look, not everybody's going to be a rocket scientist. Not everybody's going to be a pilot. Look, if you go buy a ticket for a plane to go from point A to point B, you don't have to know how the plane is built. You don't have to know all the electrical systems. You don't know how to fly the plane to expect to get somewhere safely. Okay. That's the whole purpose of education and people who go into that, and the military and training and experts that do that. So when we have a system like this, you know what it does? It just makes everything not have value, right, Jay? It's like if you can let the guys at the top
get away with
the easiest to prove crimes. And by the way, as complicated as some of this stuff was, I can assure you, putting this thing together, we gave you the easiest version to understand. We just
you did for sure. It's just that to me, I like I said, I come from the street, so it to me, I just put it in the sense of the streets. It's like you know what I'm saying, and so that's how I break it down. You know what I mean?
Because it's a street crime, dude.
Absolutely, it's a fuck. Yes, it's some gang shit. And it's like these people but they have the backing of the U.S. government. So it's not even, it's fucking bananas, man.
They couldn't get the money if the Federal Reserve wasn't giving it to them.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. If the fucking politicians weren't bought and paid for, then they wouldn't be able to do that. That's the fucking thing that makes it all fucking drive me crazy. That we elect these fucking people. We elect these people to be honorable and have integrity, and they're not. They're just selling us up the road. And then so now they have all of us fighting each other because he loves Trump and she loves, Kamala Harris. And so now we're all fighting each other and we're not seeing who the real fucking people are that we should be fighting.
We've been like this for the last at least 6 presidential cycles.
Yeah, I would say since Clinton. I could for me it's Clinton. I was born in 76. I remember a little bit of Reagan, but I got into politics Clinton. That's when I started to really get into politics, watching Crossfire with Hannity and the other cat. I can't remember his name.
Tucker Carlson. Or no, it wasn't.
Well, no, it used to be on Crossfire. Nowadays, there's only 2 people I can watch any news from, and that's Nicole Wallace and Lawrence O'Donnell. I don't watch anyone else.
I love Lawrence, and the thing about Lawrence is if he had the okay to do this, if he got paid to do this, he would be magnificent. But guess what?
He can't.
He's not paid to do this.
I know.
Dude, listen to me. I know it sounds like crazy talk, but because you don't know who I am. I'm the only person in the country that went the distance. And guys, I didn't snap my fucking finger and make this happen.
No.
We spent $4.5 million to get the $71 trillion truth that we're giving you for free. Now, we tried to make some money on it. You bet your ass. That's how I got it made, right? But there was no market for it because
nobody wanted to give you any money for it because they didn't want to expose the fucking truth.
Because they were getting the money from the people that got away with the $71 trillion.
To tell them not to do it. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, it's called an inside job, dude.
I would love to see you be able to sit down with either Tucker Carlson or Elon Musk. I would. I mean, is there any way we can try to
sit down with Tucker Carlson? It's going to be on his face in the ring in the octagon when I pound him to fucking nation.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is this: is there any pressure we could provide to be able to get you to sit down with some of these people and try to?
Because they know who I am, and they're all a bunch of lying scumbag pigs. That's what they are. They've been running from this, and they're getting paid from it. Look, what we're in the midst of right now is a battle between in the election. If you want to know the truth. It's the new robber barons versus the new Confederacy. and they're all vying for control so that they can get what it is that I'm exposing to you, which is pure freaking the full faith and credit of the United States. And the American people are just going, huh? What? Oh, I could just press a button because that. Look, I'm not saying that you don't show up in millions. We cannot allow Trump to win. Trump,
no, absolutely not.
There's no way in hell. But not only that, he's just such an insult because he's so stupid. Oh my God, he's so stupid. It's unfucking believable.
That's why they love him. That's why they want him. That's why the Heritage Foundation. That's why they're gravitating to him, because they know once they get him, they got him.
And dumb people have finally decided to be part of the process. And yeah, their vote counts, man. And I would say that most of those people that are on that track, they would fail a citizenship test. You know, you see this stuff all over like X, like, you know, illegal immigrants can vote. No, they can't. You can't.
Absolutely not. It's all bullshit, bro.
It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in the world, but it's everywhere. And it's because of what I'm saying. So, you know, that's why I'm animated. That's why I'm fired up. That's why I'm pissed off. And that's why I love you, Jay. Because Jay, you got this, man.
Yeah, I gotta. For some reason, I just gotta pay more attention to when I'm watching it. But you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm gonna start doing? I'm gonna start writing shit down on each episode that I watch, so I can go back to some shit, because he be coming with some tricky questions. I'm like, man, what the hell is he talking about?
Just know that it's one giant theft, dude. That's it.
Yeah, like I said, what I got from it was this, bro. It just Clinton, Bush, and then Obama. I just think that they were all like, I think Rubin knew what was going to happen, and he took that job in the Clinton administration so he could prevent regulation, so that he could continue to do what he was doing and make even more money. And he knew that he was going to be able to just fucking play stupid.
Okay, look, this is how easy it is, all right? They got Greenspan in power. They knew that Greenspan, this is another part of it that we have to unveil later, but I'll give you a short
little tidbit.
Okay,
yeah.
So Greenspan, as the head of the Federal Reserve, was mandated by Congress, because not too many people understand what the Federal Reserve is. It's a central bank of the United States that was created to create stability, like I said earlier, with price stability and then low inflation based on full employment, and then it creates the monetary policy, and then there's like, you know, M1, M2, and all of these other types of things, and velocity of money. But everything has to operate by the law. Okay. So, for example, when we created the emergency lending apparatus of the Federal Reserve through Federal Reserve Act 13.3, first because they created this out of the Great Depression. That's how we got the works projects out of the Great Depression to like rebuild infrastructure, to build the Hoover Dam and the Golden Gate.
And that's what Pagora did?
Yeah, that's what happened with the Federal Reserve. But the caveat, that the statutes was that it was going to go through what we call government-sponsored enterprises. You may have heard that term as it relates to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and those sorts of things, and we can go into that downstream. But at that time, it was created for the reconstruction finance. And ultimately, what they did within the caveat or within the statutes is they said that, of course, you can't freaking provide emergency lending to private capital, to private assets, because that would create speculation, which is why they created all of the laws and regulations that led to Glass-Steagall. So they knew that that was the whole formality of the statutes. But what happened starting in the 90s with Greenspan, we kept widening the lending apparatus because we had one emergency after the other. The first emergency was in 1987 with Dark Monday, because it was a crash based on computers that didn't work in sync, and then the global paper. What was it called? Oh God, I can't think of the paper that undermines all of it. That goes well. Anyway, they had to expand the emergency lending apparatus to different versions of the economy, or I should say, of finance that didn't have access to emergency capital, because ultimately Federal Reserve Act 13.3, and you can imagine this, right? So if the United States goes to war, if the United States experiences some natural disaster like a famine, or let's call it Independence Day, and a bunch of aliens show up, and we got to fund shit to keep people moving and all that sort of stuff, where's it going to come from? Well, it's going to come from the Fed to be able to pump that out really quickly, so there's not a lot of bureaucratic red tape, and it can create liquidity in the markets. What is liquidity? Liquidity is to be able to meet short-term debt, okay? So that's how that whole thing works. But by the time we got to 2008, after the savings and loan crisis, after the tech bubble, and the Enron era frauds, because this is one fraud after the other, starting in the late 90s. Not to mention, in Asia, they had a global meltdown that was the exact same shit that would hit us in 2008, by the way. If you remember in 1998, when there was on Time magazine, the committee to save the world was Alan Greenspan, Larry Summers from Harvard, and Robert Rubin.
Robert from Citicorp.
They were on the cover because they were the committee to save the world because of all the stuff that I'm telling you. They can roll debt, and that's how they're doing it with treasuries, and there's more things to it than that. But ultimately, they did a test run in Asia. They became the heroes, of the world. They ended up doing it here that led us to 2008. But I want you to imagine in the statues, Jay, think about this, right? With Congress in front of the world, like on C-SPAN, and anybody who's paying attention, but not too many people pay attention because everybody would rather watch sports and porn and, some squirrel or
TikTok,
whatever. Right? But so what we ended up doing, could you imagine if, as they were writing the rules and regulations for the statutes for the emergency lending and the full faith and credit of the United States, that they'd say, hey, I got a great idea. Why don't we bank the entire global economy on fraud based on predation, based on liars' loans and liars' securities and ultimately everything else that would create this vacuum where it would blow up the entire world and all of the collateral would be worth zero from fraud. Do you think anybody would write that legislation and go, hey, I'd vote for that?
No, not at all.
Okay, that's exactly right. Because in the end, not only not only would they loan to private interests, right? Because they could speculate, but the thing about lending, Jay, is that you've got to have collateral, and that collateral's got to have value. If the collateral doesn't have any value from racketeering, should you get 100% on the dollar? No,
absolutely not. You shouldn't be rewarded from fucking. You shouldn't be rewarded for the fucking crime and the fucking shit you've created.
Okay, but now we're voting for Trump. What's Trump been involved with his whole life? Here, for all you,
he's been involved in the same exact thing. So he's going to come in and he's going to deregulate every fucking thing.
But of course, because it's like he wants to be a king. It's like, hey, everybody serve me. So I mean, my God, just the idea of it just makes me so furious. But think about how stupid this is, because for all of you Trump supporters, they're probably like, Patrick, God damn it, I believe in what you're saying, but I wish you wouldn't hate Trump so bad. And whatever's going through your mind.
Well, they think they think that he isn't. They think he's like not a criminal. They think he is going to.
That's why then you're just dumb. I'm sorry.
He thinks he's going to buck the system. They think he's going to be the ones to stand up to the government, and it's not going to help.
He's trying to get a piece of it, but
absolutely,
you got to listen. And this has got to be my last point.
Go ahead.
I got to go watch some football, man. The bottom line is, dude. So when Trump had to pay his $450 million fine, and he was scrambling, otherwise he was going to go bankrupt with his all of his, his real estate in Manhattan, like what, about 5 months ago was, I think, how long ago they did the civil fraud trial.
And it's like 450 million or some shit.
Yeah, 450 more million. And the bottom line is, all he would have had to have done if he was in the same exact situation is call up the Fed and say, hey, give me 10 times what it is that I owe, and we'll call it good.
That's crazy.
So for all of you Trump supporters, he got fucked too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Both ways. All right. Well, listen, man. I thank everybody for tuning in. I thank Roseanne. I thank Patrick for coming on my show and exposing the con. Keep looking out for me. It's at McDaniel0207 for Twitter, and I also have a account for the podcast. Is at UncleJayPodcast on Twitter. Just keep a lookout. Follow me, and I'll be posting when we'll have the next show. It'll probably be next Saturday. I've still got to talk with them, make sure they're available, and we're gonna do episode 4. And then we'll do episode 5 a week later, and then we'll have it all laid out, and then we can discuss the entire whole thing. And then what Patrick will do is he will explain the next steps on what we need to do in order to get the movement, the Clean New Deal, rocking and rolling, because that is the future of our existence. Go ahead, brother.
I want you to remember this while you're talking to the Bills Mafia and you got your haircut down the street and everything else. Dude, does anybody in your neighborhood or even in Buffalo, does anybody have the $71 trillion tree?
No. There's only one guy that's got that. I know who's got it, though. I know who's got it, but nobody else does.
No, but you do.
Absolutely. And because I do, I'm going to make sure everybody I know knows it.
That's right.
So listen, man, I've been in these spaces on Twitter. I've been putting it up in the jumbo. I've been telling people about it. I talk about Addy Poke all the time. And anybody that I can get to listen to me, this is what I'm talking about. So, I can't do it too much in the sports spaces because that's basically all they want to do is talk about sports. But whenever I have an opportunity to, slide something in there, I try my best. But, again, thanks for being on my show. Until next week, everybody, thanks for tuning in. I bid you all a farewell. Thank you so much.
Rebirth, a remix, repeat this, a reintroduction, conceive this, a whole new job with a free with, a reproduce, so smooth on the mic and the light, my own moves, give it life, the right from my own view, words mature and then grow groove, I'm a soul improve, work on me, wake up in the morning just to work on the beat, so intuitive, that's how I gotta be, when I'm in tune with the room and the God in me. It's true, never lose that. I never come through with a loose rap. Tighten up, time to enlighten them, striking like lightning and hope I don't frighten them. Boop. Recited for you to get you excited and hype. Move with the rhythm tonight, beautiful type. Women in my inhibitions, I'll move to the side. Music's my only religion, surrounding myself with only musicians. Only the best, solely uplifting. With this combination, my music is infinite. Ideal situations, stimulate them. Wanna inspire and motivate them. My goal is take them to a higher level, let the pain escape them. It's euphoric, are you for it? I promise I know you have a use for it, so let's use it. Get into it, no matter what we call it, it's soul music.
Thanks for tuning in to the Uncle Jay podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and catch us next time. This is Uncle Jay signing off. Stay blessed and always go Bills.